Chapter 41:20. Strange. Why was this sudden chill in her heart so intense and direct? Hong Shang took a deep breath. Her eyes indifferently swept a glance at Arbor. How about it? You dare to accept my conditions, Bang. Emollien's sudden attack caused Hong Shang to be shocked. She quickly placed her hands in front of her forehead and released a fire spirit barrier. Boom! The moment the fire spirit barrier came into contact with Prince Mo's power, it shattered. While Hong Shang was shocked, the few youths behind her hurriedly threw out a few defensive talismans and arranged them in front of Hong Shang. Only then was she barely able to withstand the attack. Acting on your own initiative. My matters are none of your business. Emollien coldly glanced at her. Immediately apologize to my wife, or else. Arbor tilted his head and coldly swept a glance at them. Hong Shang was unwilling, but since senior brother Mo had already spoken, she could only take a step forward and cupped her hands towards Arbor. Hong Shang was disrespectful. Please forgive her. Senior Sister Hong. The few youths from Glory City knitted their brows and called out in dissatisfaction. Emollien's eyes were incomparably cold as she stared at Hong Shang, causing her to uncomfortably lower her eyes. The little stoic's eyes revealed the meaning of "you're courting death." Just as she was about to open her mouth, she saw Hong Shang raise her hand and coldly say, "Then, I'll have to respectfully invite Miss to leave. Farewell." Hong Shang led her people and bowed towards Emollien. She simply didn't give the stoic a chance to speak, turn around, and left with the group of Glory Academy disciples. Before leaving, Arbor could feel the unfriendly gazes of these people from Glory City. She lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Her eyes flashed, and she somewhat understood why these people didn't like her. As the proud sons of Glory City, these genius students didn't wish for their future mistress to be an ant with a low cultivation that could be crushed with a finger. These young men and women from the big families of corporations had such bad tempers and were very overbearing. Jojo. Emollien looked at his wife worriedly. Are you angry? Arbor nodded solemnly. How could she not be angry? Someone was already knocking at her door, telling her to get away from Jojo's lotus if she knew what was good for her. It would be strange if she wasn't angry. The little stoic raised her head and glanced at Lotus. You don't feel bad about crippling her, right? Emollien shook her head decisively and quickly defended herself. I'm not familiar with them at all. If there was any friendship between them, it was probably a friendship from more than 10 years ago. Furthermore, the amount of time he stayed in Glory City with his mother wouldn't exceed 10 days. With his father's level of sticking to his wife, 10 days might not even be enough. How much friendship could he have with people like them? Even if they were friends, it was not as important as their own daughter-in-law. Xiaomu nodded her head, her eyes ice cold. What position did they have to show her an expression as if she wasn't worthy of Jojo's lotus? Some irrelevant people inexplicably jumped in front of her and pointed at her. They were all people who needed to be taught a lesson. Even if she was a good-for-nothing, the matter between her and Lotus didn't need them to interfere. Whether she was worthy or not, how she and Jojo's Lotus lived their lives, that was between the two of them. Chapter 41:21. Other people, how could they be so shameless as to look down on her? While Arbor was deep in thought, illusions of the contestants' names appeared in the air above the 6 stages. If no one was on the stage, and no one registered for the free challenge competition in advance. At this time, the competition was carried out according to the drawing of lots. The drawing of lots was done by the teachers of each school backstage, and the matches were randomly matched. Everything depended on luck. For the free challenge competition, one had to apply 10 times in advance, and the other side had to agree in person. After the 12 contestants entered the stage, the 6 stages slowly rotated, and the atmosphere of the whole venue was ignited by the cheers of the audience. Arbor rested her chin on one hand, looking at the stage closest to her. On the stage, a girl from the Devil Star Academy was fighting with a student from the Shadow Academy. The two people's magnificent spiritual energy crisscrossed, flashing in front of everyone's eyes, and their movements were faster than ordinary people. Especially the Devil Star Academy disciple, who probably specialized in agile and graceful movements. In a few leaps and bounds, she made the male disciple from the Shadow Academy suffer a few losses. Suddenly, the male disciple from the Shadow Academy raised his hand and summoned a 12th level spiritual beast. When the 12th level spiritual beast appeared, its pressure intimidated the whole audience and more or less affected the other 5 stages. The female disciple from the Devil Star Academy clenched her teeth and also summoned a spiritual beast. It flew up to the Shadow Academy disciple, and after 100 moves, her body swayed and couldn't hold on. Arbor shook her head. She already knew that this girl would lose. After all, there was a difference in physical strength between men and women, and the level of the spiritual beast summoned by this girl was much lower than the opponent's. She was completely suppressed. The most important point was that although this girl's movements were light and graceful, she couldn't hold on for such a long time and kept going back and forth on the stage. Eventually, she would be exhausted, and her spiritual energy couldn't be consumed for a long time. When her spiritual energy was exhausted, she would lose miserably looking at how that female disciple from Devil Star Academy was kicked off the stage without the slightest hesitation and was unable to make a sound for a long time. Xiaomu knew that the strength of this kick had broken 3 of that girl's ribs. This person from the Shadow Academy was quite ruthless. Speaking of which, Xiaomu really did recognize this man standing on the stage right now. Previously, he had met a man in the Phoenixwood Forest. His name seemed to be Zhao Yi. Previously, he had been following Mu Xiaoxue, the 4th Miss of the City of Shadows. Since this fellow was here, then Miss Mu was most likely here as well. When Xiao Mu's gaze shifted, she saw a dense mass of heads as far as the eye could see. If she really wanted to find something in this crowd, then she could only expend her divine conscience to activate her divine eye. Arbor didn't think it was necessary, so he turned his attention back to the field. This time, after the 6 matches, Arbor heard the host's clear and melodious voice ring out like the sounds of nature. Ladies and gentlemen, the first round of the free-for-all competition begins now. Student Arbor from the Royal Academy and student Zhang Luxue from the Jiaowei Academy, please come to the stage. I'm going. The little guy excitedly shook Missouri Lian's hand. The latter didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just as Zhang Luxue rose into the air and flew towards the ring, a slender figure suddenly flashed past. Chapter 41:22. Everyone only felt their vision blur, and when they looked at the stage again, they abruptly discovered that the little stoic was already standing on the stage. At this very moment, Zhang Luxue leaped to the edge of the stage and looked at Arbor in slight horror after landing. What was going on? Why was she so much faster than him? How did she appear on the stage so quickly? Zhang Luxue looked Xiao Mu up and down in bewilderment. She used something like a teleportation talisman, right? The astonished crowd below couldn't help but shout. Could talismans be used in the competition? Of course they could. The degree of freedom in this heavenly yuan ranking tournament was very high. Even if you wanted to use poison, concealed weapons, or all sorts of random self-made items, it was all allowed. This point was clearly stated in the rules of the competition. Therefore, even if there were people shouting loudly, there was no need to say anything else. However, they probably didn't expect that someone would immediately use a teleportation talisman to posture the moment they appeared. Wouldn't this raise the opponent's vigilance? The competition hadn't even started yet, but was it really wise to raise the opponent's vigilance? How could these people know that the little stoic didn't activate a talisman at all? Before the start of the competition, the little fellow had already extracted the space-time power that could be used continuously for about 4 hours from the small silver ball and temporarily stored it in her body. Therefore, she didn't need to activate any talismans at all. Probably only some young talents with especially sharp eyesight would raise a trace of doubt in the depths of their hearts. Why didn't he sense the flow of talisman power in the air? Zhang Luxue instantly summoned his 3-foot-long sword from his conscience on high alert and held it tightly in his hand. A faint trace of doubt surfaced in his eyes. Why did this level 3 spiritual master in front of him give him so much pressure? Wasn't this strange? The other party was only a little level 3 spiritual master, and she was already a level 10 spiritual master. Logically speaking, she absolutely shouldn't be pressured by this stoic's aura. Taking a deep breath, Jiang Lushui calmed himself down and cupped his fists. Zhou Academy, Jiang Lushui. Thanks for, before he could finish speaking, Jiang Lushui felt his heart thump heavily. She saw that her opponent, who was 30 feet away from her, had suddenly appeared in front of her in a single step. He spread out his 5 fingers and fiercely pressed down on her face. Jiang Lushui only felt a huge and majestic force continuously passing through his opponent's arm. She lost her balance and fell on her back. Jiang Liushui's eyes flashed with a trace of panic and hesitation. He was dumbfounded. The sounds of gasps and screams around her were all blocked out of her mind. It was as if all the air around him had been sucked out in an instant. He could only hear the rumbling in his head. Other than that, there was no other sound. The back of Jiang Yoshui's head was about to hit the ground. Xiao Mu's eyes were sharp and her hands were nimble, and she grabbed her collar with a backhand, yanking her in front of her. Jiang Lushui stared blankly at the person in front of him. He opened his mouth, but before he could make a sound, his body had already been thrown out of the arena. Jiang Yoshui's but landed on the ground outside the arena. The fall didn't hurt, but his entire body was still in a daze. He didn't know what had happened until the tide-like roars came from all directions. Adjust the time tomorrow. Chapter 41-23. Only then did Jiang Lushui come back to his senses. She had lost. She had completely lost, hadn't she? The girl's eyes suddenly widened to the size of copper bells, and she stared fixedly at Arbor with an incredulous expression. Heavens, she was a level 10 Great Spirit Master, but she couldn't even summon her Spirit Beast in one exchange. She was already defeated by a little Spirit Master who looked like she was only a level 3 Spirit Master. She was thrown out of the arena in one blow. Jiang Lushui couldn't help but shudder. It wasn't her misconception. When that stoic-faced person's hand pressed on her face with an ice-cold gaze, she could feel the aura of death approaching. This stoic-faced person's aura was so powerful that she suddenly felt like she was no match for him. But why was it like this? Jiang Lushui took a deep breath and was helped up by a few schoolmates from the same academy. His eyes still didn't blink as he stared fixedly at Arbor. At this moment, the female host, Duo, finally recovered from her shock and kicked the male host beside her, who was also in a daze. The female host, Duo, said with a smile, "Congratulations to this student from the Royal Academy for winning the first free challenge match. You will receive 100 points. Congratulations to this student from the Royal Academy." The entire arena was in an uproar. Many puzzled cries drowned out the cheers of Qi, Xian, and the others. Arbor raised her brows, and her gaze swept across the crowd below the arena. Her gaze faintly landed on the astonished Hong Shang. This girl was currently looking at her with a suspicious gaze, as if she was very doubtful about how she could sweep Jiang Lushui off the stage with one blow. A young man sitting beside Hong Shang frowned slightly and said to her in a low voice, "Senior Sister Hong, can you tell what happened just now?" Hong Shang thought for a moment with a cold expression and shook her head. Her movements were very fast just now. Even she almost didn't see clearly when she moved and how she threw Jiang Lushui off the stage. It was truly inconceivable. "Senior Sister Hong, you have to be careful. Perhaps this Miss Qiao isn't as weak as we think." Hong Shang couldn't help but sneer. "Junior brother Jia, you're being too cautious. It's just because I have some talismans in my possession. I've heard that the future mistress of Glory City is a symbol master." Cha Pinchao slowly reminded him. A faint cold light flashed in the depths of Hong Shang's eyes as he sneered. "Oh, let me experience the power of a talisman master. I've heard that a powerful symbol master can turn a city wall into ashes with a flick of his finger after reaching a certain level." Hee hee. Hong Shang suddenly chuckled. "I wonder what level her symbol force has reached." Cha Pinchao smiled and lowered his head to hide the slight ridicule in his eyes. Senior Apprentice Sister Hong had indeed been cultivating in the sect for too long and was cut off from the outside world. In fact, there were many people who shared the same thoughts as Senior Hong. What a joke. Shouldn't these people first understand their opponents before making an appointment for a battle? Even with Jiang Liushui's example, she still couldn't raise her vigilance. Sure enough, she's been living like a prince in Glory City for the past few years. Her days have been too good. Cha Pin Xiao hid the ridicule on his lips and faintly lowered his eyes. Chapter 41-24. Hong Shang faintly swept a glance at Cha Pin Xiao. What? Do you have other opinions? I don't have any opinions, Cha Pin Xiao said with a smile in his voice. Hong Shang couldn't help but crease her brows. This junior brother Cha's strength was below hers, but his brain was indeed much smarter than hers. Junior brother Cha also expressed his disapproval when she brought people to cause trouble for that stoic face. Could it be that he really felt that stoic face had something outstanding about it? Hong Shang lifted her eyes again and looked towards the little stoic's direction. Next match, Fire Refining City's Wei Nanfeng versus Underworld Province's Tianhua Academy, Biao Liang. Arbor had just walked down and sat down when he heard the male host, Nyonyo, announce the names of the two competitors. The little fellow promptly tugged on Prince Mo's sleeve. Your family's Wei Nanfeng is going up. The crown prince couldn't help but be speechless. He lightly stroked her small head. What family's Wei Nanfeng? You're my family's. As for Wei Nanfeng, looking at this contemptuous expression, if Wei Nanfeng was here and heard his own brother talking about him like this, he would definitely cry. As he spoke, Wei Nanfeng and that Tianhua Academy's Biao Liang simultaneously flew onto the stage and cupped their fists in salute. At the same time, they summoned their weapons from their conscience. The author is here, cough, 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 cough. Outside the gauze screen, below the steps of the main hall, eunuchs and royal maids were all kneeling there in fear and trepidation. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Ever since Her Majesty the Empress arrived, the atmosphere here was so cold and strange that it made people feel extremely fearful. Everyone only dared to lie down and play dead, motionlessly pretending that their 5 senses and 6 senses were completely blocked. How could they still dare to listen to the quarrel coming from behind the gauze screen? Impossible. Her Majesty can't have passed away like this. Tell me, is it him? Is it Prince Chen's doing? Is it? Empress Lu's face was waxy yellow, and her eyes were completely sunken due to lack of sleep. Now, she was so thin that her cheekbones protruded high, and her eyes were like a demon from hell. She gloomily stared unwaveringly at the row of imperial physicians kneeling in front of her as she let out a high-pitched and impassioned shriek. The row of imperial physicians had already fainted from fright. The Empress accused the crown prince of murdering the great emperor? Who the fuck would dare to respond to such words? Cough, cough, cough. The chief physician of the Imperial Hospital braced himself and raised his head. He shook his head and said, Your Majesty the Empress worries too much. His Majesty's injuries were too severe in his early years, and all these years, he has only been holding on with medicine. His Majesty is very clear about his own body, including the maids who serve him. Shut up. Empress Lu pointed at the chief physician of the Imperial Institute of Medicine with her sharp fingernails and shouted, Wang Hua, how dare you give false testimony for Prince Chun? It was him. He must have poisoned His Majesty. Investigate. Investigate for this consort. I want to get to the bottom of this. The Empress has been worrying too much these days, and her mind is not clear. Send her back to Rinchuan Palace first. Duan Yu's chilly voice abruptly rang out, so icy that it made people's hearts involuntarily shudder. On the side, head eunuch Lai Fu, who had been keeping his head down the entire time, quickly responded with a yes when he heard Duan Yu's command. What are you doing? What are you doing? You bunch of wretched slaves. How dare you grab this consort? Let go of this consort. Let go. Empress Lu shrieked. Duan Yu's eyes coldly swept over her. Chapter 41-25. She didn't say anything, but the royal guards walked up to grab Empress Lu and shove her out the door. Impudent! Impudent! Empress Lu shrieked as she struggled to break free from their restraints. Rong Li, you're a wolf with wild ambitions. You killed His Majesty. You. Duan Yu pressed his aching head and turned to look at Wu Yong. Prime Minister. Yes. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong nodded. He stood up, lifted the muslin curtain, and walked outside the screen. He cupped his hands at the Empress and said, My condolences, Your Majesty. His Majesty did pass away because of the aggravation of his injuries. His Majesty has sought medical treatment for his injuries for so many years. Who in court doesn't know about it? Just a while ago, His Majesty passed away very quietly after calmly delegating some matters to us subjects. His Majesty passed away very peacefully and quietly. Your Majesty, please don't continue making a fuss here. You bunch of sycophantic officials and traitors were all bribed by Prince Chun. You all want to deal with my Li. Sycophantic officials, sycophantic officials. No matter how extraordinary Prime Minister Wu Yong's bearing was, his nose was about to become crooked from anger when the Empress pointed at him and called him sycophantic officials and traitors. Your Majesty, please be careful with your words, Wu Yong said gravely. A person directly walked out of the inner room and coldly looked at the unreasonable Empress. He said solemnly, in the Empress's eyes, could it be that this prince of the first rank, Prince of Qing, Prince of Lu, the left and right prime ministers, and the 6 ministers are all sycophantic officials? Empress Lu couldn't help but be taken aback when she saw the handsome middle-aged man with a cold and stern expression. Rue? Prince Rue? Empress Lu was flabbergasted. She then looked at the various princes and ministers who filed out of the inner room and felt a bit unwell. Prince of the first rank? Prince of Qing? Prince of Lu? Why are you all? The crown prince of King Qing glanced at the Empress and said in a deep voice, His Majesty has already drafted the Edict of Succession. He summoned all of us here and handed the edict to His Highness the Crown Prince in front of all of us. Your Majesty, you truly were too rude just now. His Majesty crowned Prince Chun as the Crown Prince 3 days ago. But just now, the Empress kept talking about Prince Chun. From her mouth to her heart, she was completely convinced that the person in front of her was the Crown Prince. Hey, the old Prince of Qing had always been a peacemaker. At this moment, seeing that her son didn't give the Empress any face and directly went against the Empress, she hurriedly tugged at his clothes and mediated, Your Majesty, please don't take offense. My son is just straightforward and speaks his mind. Her Majesty must have been overly grieved by His Majesty's sudden death. That's why she spoke without thinking. Everyone, please don't take offense. Did His Majesty call all of you here? The Empress trembled all over and her face turned pale. The great Emperor knew that his life was coming to an end. Before he passed away, he didn't even plan to look at her. Just how much did he despise her? Empress Lu immediately collapsed to the ground, unable to muster up any strength. She knew. She had always known that there was no place for her in His Majesty's heart. He liked someone else. Although His Majesty had never said it to them, as a woman's intuition, she knew it for sure. Your Majesty, please restrain your grief. Prime Minister Wu sighed. Chapter 41-26. To tell the truth, Prime Minister Wu suddenly couldn't find any words of reproach when he saw the Empress like this. He could actually understand the Empress's worries about personal gains and losses now. His Majesty didn't even want to see her one last time before his death. Presumably, he truly didn't have any feelings for her after all these years. It was said that people would develop feelings for each other after interacting for a long time. But His Majesty was so indifferent that it made people's hearts heavy. Duan Yu coldly gazed at Empress Lu, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground, with a faint sneer on his lips. Who was she pretending for? Those who didn't know would think that she had deep feelings for the Emperor. Everything was merely for the sake of benefits. Seeing her silently sobbing with tears streaming down her face, they would think that she was very broken-hearted. If the crown prince hadn't been dethroned and her son, Rong Li, ascended to the throne now, perhaps she would already be bursting with joy. Unfortunately, the Liu family was finished. Rong Li was also finished. You were also about to be finished. Duan Yu's eyes revealed a cold and sharp glint and he faintly lowered his gaze. Although Prince Rue and Prince Li of the first rank were about 10 years younger than the emperor, they were the emperor's biological uncles. Moreover, the emperor treated these two little royal uncles extremely well all these years. The two royal uncles were also very supportive to the emperor, calling them together with the Prince of Qing and the Prince of Lu to make arrangements after their deaths was actually to pave the way for Duan Yu's ascension to the throne. As the empress's senior, Prince Rue naturally couldn't harshly criticize her after seeing her like this. He merely sighed and said, "Empress, I believe you are also aware. Due to an old injury from many years ago, His Majesty's body is getting thinner by the day. It's precisely because His Majesty felt that his days were numbered that he hurriedly brought His Highness the Fourth Prince back to Tsang Province." Empress Lu gritted her teeth in hatred. How could she not know these things? Hence, when noble consort Duan returned to the palace, she became a thorn in her side, because she knew from the start that the emperor intended to nurture this fourth prince. When His Highness the Fourth Prince returned to the palace, she quickly discovered to her horror that this fourth prince was above her son, Crown Prince Rong Li in every aspect, whether it was talent, cultivation, or ability to manage affairs. Of course, she hated the mother and son to death. Not only did she want noble consort Duan dead, but she also wanted Duan Yu, this little bastard, dead. Damn bastard, damn Rong Yuan. The empress truly didn't expect that the emperor would actually plant his seed on the distant Seacombe planet. And this seed, without her knowledge, had actually grown to this stage in one fell swoop. How hateful! Empress Lu took a deep breath and angrily grasped the handkerchief in her hand. His Majesty's cultivation has completely dissipated over the years, and he's no different from an ordinary person without any cultivation. Prince Rue shook his head and sighed. However, His Majesty left very calmly this time. This prince saw that his face was filled with relief, and there was no sign of pain. Presumably, his heart has found a place to return to. Empress Lu bit her lips bitterly. Have a place to belong to? His heart had a place to return to. Oh, what a sarcastic word. Shouldn't her husband's heart belong to her? At this time, Empress Lu had completely forgotten that she didn't give all her true feelings and sincerity to Rong Yuan. Usually, she would think more about how to let her son inherit the throne and how to let her Lu family take a step forward in the Sangzhou continent. Chapter 41-27. Next, we still have to prepare His Majesty's funeral. Court matters are also piled up like a mountain. The Crown Prince's ascension is imminent, so there are many matters to attend to. The Empress should return to Benevolence Palace as soon as possible to properly recuperate, Prince Li of the first rank said aloofly. Prince Rue also nodded. Prince Li of the first rank is extremely correct. If the Empress has no other matters, please return to the palace first. The implication was, don't stay here and cause trouble for others. They were already busy enough. Since her two uncles had already spoken, there was nothing the Empress could do other than secretly resent them. However, she was truly unresigned, and her venomous eyes were still glaring at Duan Yu before she left. Ever since their Lu family was annihilated, everything developed in a terrifying direction. It was led astray by a bunch of coquettish bitches. This matter was truly too fishy. She was very clear about her own son. His character was pure and virtuous, and he was also very chaste. In addition, Li Er's health wasn't too good, and he also greatly cherished his life, so he normally wouldn't mess around with women. Moreover, it was a man. When the Empress recalled the scene she saw that day when she vomited blood, her entire face couldn't help but contort. Prince Rue frowned as he watched the pale-faced Empress being supported out. He grumbled in displeasure. With such a temperament, it's no wonder you raised a son like that. Oh no. A young eunuch scrambled inside with a ghastly pale face and nearly bumped into Prince Rue's leg. Your Highness the Crown Prince, all the princes, something has happened. What happened? Prince Qing's eyelid twitched, and he quickly strode over to that young eunuch with his chubby legs, lifting him up at once. Hurry and speak, what happened? That eunuch's lips quivered in fright as he hastily said, "The dethroned crown prince drowned in the pond in the imperial garden." "What?" Prince Rue growled, flabbergasted. Princely of the first rank glared at that eunuch and demanded, "What are you still standing there for? Lead the way." "Yes, yes." The young eunuch was so frightened that his entire body was trembling. His entire body quivered when he heard Prince Li of the first rank's words. After Prince Qing threw him to the ground, he stumbled to his feet and crawled towards the door. A faint sneer appeared on Duan Yu's lips. When everyone followed the eunuch to the side of the pond in the imperial garden, they saw Empress Lu sitting on the ground with her hair disheveled. She was hugging a young man dressed in brocade, whose face was deathly pale. She was bawling without a care for her image. The many guards, maids, and eunuchs around her were all helpless. They couldn't reach out and take the person from the Empress' arms. Prince Rue and the others hurried forward and glanced at Rong Li's stiff and pale face. Seeing that his face was stiff, they knew that there was no hope for him. "He probably slipped into the pool last night. You bunch of dog slaves. How is he on duty? Why did you only find out now that such a big thing had happened to the dethroned crown prince?" Head eunuch Lai Fu's face was dark as he pointed at the trembling eunuchs and palace maids kneeling in a row and scolded them angrily. The eunuch close to the dethroned crown prince, Rong Li, crawled forward a few steps and cried out with a sobbing tone, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, the princes, please allow me to report. The dethroned crown prince drank himself to death last night and insisted on going out for a walk. The servants wanted to follow him, but they were all chased back after being reprimanded by the dethroned crown prince." "Absurd!" Empress Lu shrieked. Chapter 4128. "It's clearly you bunch of wicked servants who neglected my son. Now you're saying it's his fault." Empress Lu pointed at the young eunuch who was refuting and shrieked, "Guards, guards, drag this dog slave away and flog him to death. Flog him to death." The eunuch was so frightened that he couldn't stop trembling. He scrambled to Prince Rue's feet and kowtowed loudly. "Your Highness, everything this servant said is true. All the royal maids and eunuchs in Huayang Hall can testify. The dethroned crown prince's temperament has changed greatly recently, so he won't tolerate us servants getting close to him. Every time this servant wants to follow him, we're all chased away by the dethroned crown prince. If we insist on following and infuriate the dethroned crown prince, we will even be beaten to death. Woo-woo. Nonsense, nonsense." The empress flew into a rage and hugged Rong Li's icy body. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she shrieked, "What dethroned crown prince? What dethroned crown prince? You actually dared to treat my son like this? Humiliate him like this? No wonder he doesn't want you to follow and serve him. Ah, this empress wants to kill you crafty dog slaves. Kill you all." Princely of the first rank couldn't help but roll his eyes. If this wasn't the dethroned crown prince, then what was? Ever since His Majesty dethroned this person of his crown prince title, he didn't confer a king or give any title. So what was he called if not the dethroned crown prince? The eunuchs and royal maids were all trembling in fright and rolled all over the ground, not daring to get up. Duan Yu, on the other hand, angrily rebuked impatiently, "Enough, if you want to make a fuss, then go back and make a fuss. What kind of scandal is this in the garden? It's you. It's you who killed my son. It's you." Empress Lu was like a rabid dog right now, biting whoever she caught. Everyone else was simply speechless at her. "Your Majesty the Empress, His Majesty was dying yesterday, so he stayed in His Majesty's bedchamber with His Highness the Crown Prince and didn't take a step out. During this time, His Highness the Crown Prince sat in front of His Majesty's bed and didn't go out at all. If he wanted to harm my Li, did he need to do it himself? Did he need to do it?" Empress Lu harshly as she hugged her darling son. She glared at Duan Yu like a madwoman. "Speak, speak. Was it you? Was it you who harmed my Li?" "Ah." Duan Yu coldly stared at her as a mocking smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Heh, you think too highly of your son. This consort wants to deal with him? A single finger would have sufficed. Is there a need for such a scheme? In reality, your son has already been killed by this consort. He has vanished into thin air. You won't even be able to get a single strand of hair. Lu and Xiang, this is just the beginning. You can't take it anymore? Duan Yu's eyes were solemn and cold. Don't worry. I will definitely make you beg for death. Every day, he was filled with regret and pain. How stupid of a crime he had committed. Empress Lu gazed at Duan Yu's peach blossom eyes that were overflowing with light and color. They were clearly so beautiful, yet they inexplicably made people feel a chill in their hearts. Soul returning pill, soul returning pill, soul returning pill. Empress Lu suddenly seemed to think of something. She hugged her son and hurriedly moved a few times. He looked at Prince Rue and Prince Li of the first rank with a face full of hope. Imperial uncles, save me. As long as I go to the divine province and beg for a soul-returning pill, I will definitely be able to save my son. My son is a cultivator. Although his cultivation wasn't high, his cultivation wasn't completely crippled, and his conscience wasn't damaged. As long as there was a soul-returning pill, he would definitely be able to save his son. I heard that the crown princess of the divine province knows how to refine a soul-returning pill. Adjustment failed. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 41-29. Prince Rue, Prince Li, royal uncles, please save your grandnephew. Li can't die. I can't live without my son. Empress Lu cried until her face was pale and miserable. Prince Rue and Prince Li of the first rank glanced at her and said with a sigh, "The divine land is very far away from here." I heard that the Empress of the divine land woke up after taking the soul-returning pill made by the crown princess. But we didn't see it with our own eyes after all. It's just hearsay, so we don't know how much truth there is. Prince Rue said very calmly, "We can't take it completely seriously. Prince Chen has it. Prince Chen has it." Prince Rue's eyes darkened. "Your Majesty the Empress, please be careful with your words. Prince Chen isn't Prince Chen anymore. This is the current crown prince, the heir that His Majesty personally acknowledged. Could it be that Your Majesty wants to oppose the deceased His Majesty? You don't want to acknowledge His Highness the Crown Prince's identity?" "This Imperial one doesn't have such intentions," the Empress said coldly. However, her attitude with Duan Yu was very stiff earlier, so she couldn't bring herself to directly ask for the soul-returning pill from Duan Yu. She could only pin her hopes on Prince Rue and Prince Li. However, the two princes were speechless at Empress Lu's emotional intelligence. "You said you were at odds with His Highness the Crown Prince in every way, and both sides were as incompatible as fire and water. You're already like this, yet you still have the nerve to ask him for such a precious pill, the soul-returning pill? Who didn't know how important that sacred medicine was to cultivators? If a dead person could be revived, not only would their previous cultivation be unaffected, but they might even improve a lot by chance. Do you think that with your relationship with His Highness the Crown Prince, he would give you such an important pill?" Prince Rue frowned and glanced at the Empress, pretending not to see the high hopes in her eyes. "What a joke. You can't ask His Highness the Crown Prince yourself, so you want him to sell his old face. Is this appropriate?" Prince Li also didn't speak. When the Empress saw this, she collapsed on the ground dejectedly. She hugged the dethroned crown Prince Rong Li's icy body and sobbed. "Royal uncles, princes, is there no one who can help us, a widow and an orphan? My Li is dead." The Empress sobbed, and her voice became extremely choked. "Now that there's a way to save my Li, why not try it? Could it really be as I expected? Li was killed by you?" Empress Lu sternly pointed in Duan Yu's direction, her sunken eyes revealing a hostile glint. Duan Yu glanced at her expressionlessly and couldn't resist clicking his tongue. With such a lack of talent in acting, what was the point of acting? The provocation didn't seem to be a provocation, and the bitter love play didn't seem to be a bitter love play. Watching it, it felt particularly out of place. "I don't have what the Empress is talking about." No, of course there was. In the ring that Jojo had given him, there was an excellent black pattern soul restoring pill. This saint medicine was naturally stored away by him. Would he use it on Rongli? Not to mention that Rongli had already turned into ashes. Even if he really had a corpse, how could he deserve it? What's more, the drowned corpse in front of him was only a death row prisoner. It was not Ronly at all. It was just a disguise. She couldn't even recognize her own son. A mocking smile surfaced on Duan Yu's lips. She hugged and howled for so long, yet she couldn't even tell who the person in her arms was. How could it not be ironic? Chapter 41:30. She even kept saying that she wanted to ask for a soul-returning pill for her son. Truly sorry, but unfortunately, your son has already fused with the dust. Even if he ate 8 or 10 soul-returning pills, he wouldn't be able to return his soul or come back to life. Duan Yu aloofly swept Empress Lu a glance and said coldly, "What are you still standing there for? The Empress is unwell, so help her back to Rinchuan Palace." "No, I won't go. No." Empress Lu shouted harshly and suddenly threw herself at Duan Yu's feet. "Ronly, are you going to leave him to die like this? This is your eldest brother. Is your eldest brother's life merely an ant in your eyes?" Empress Lu angrily said in a threatening manner, "You must have a soul-returning pill on you. This pill doesn't have much use for the current you, right? Why are you unwilling to use this soul-returning pill to save your eldest brother?" Duan Yu gave her a mocking smile. He didn't speak, but everyone around him felt the heavy atmosphere pressing down on their hearts, making it hard for them to breathe. "Ronly," Empress Lu bellowed angrily. "Take it as this royal one begging you." "Begging?" Duan Yu swept her a glance, a cold glint in his eyes. "What kind of attitude are you using to beg me?" He coldly swept that woman a glance. "Now you want to beg him? Then what were you doing before? Could it be that only your son's life was important, but his mother's life wasn't?" Duan Yu took a deep breath and firmly suppressed the raging hatred in his heart. Right, this was revenge. Moreover, this revenge was only the beginning. If she couldn't stand it now, then how could she continue living in the future? His cold and heavy eyes gazed deeply at Empress Lu. His cold voice abruptly rang in Empress Lu's ears. "I don't have a soul-returning pill. Even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you." Empress Lu's entire body fell limply to the ground. All of a sudden, it was as if the air in her chest was completely blocked, unable to come out or go down. She abruptly opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Your Majesty the Empress." All the royal maids and eunuchs shrieked. The expressions of Prince Li, Prince Rui, and the other princes also changed slightly. "Empress, why are you doing this?" Prince Qing's round face showed a hint of hesitation. Looking at the Empress's current state, he could not bear to see her like this. In the past, the Empress had the support of the Lu family. How could she have fallen to such a helpless state? King Qing. The Empress cried so much that her makeup was all ruined. She cried to the heavens and wiped away her tears. She no longer had the majesty of an empress. "Prince of Qing, please help me persuade the Crown Prince. I'm sure you know the relationship between the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess of Shenzhou. It's as easy as lifting a finger for the Crown Prince." The Prince of Qing looked at the sullen Duan Yu before looking at the Empress. "Empress, you're truly making things too difficult for this old official. This matter is also very difficult for your Highness. Now that His Highness the Crown Prince is about to ascend the throne, there are many things that need to be dealt with," the Prince of Qing said with a troubled expression. "Moreover, speaking of which, that resurrection pill is only a legendary pill. Whether it can really bring someone back from the dead is another matter, isn't it?" "It's not." Empress Lu sharply interrupted the Prince of Qing. Her eyes were bloodshot as she glared at the other party and said, "It's true. The resurrection pill's effects are real." Chapter 41:31. Otherwise, how could the Empress of the Divine Province really come back from the dead? Prince Qing became increasingly troubled. Then let's just say it's true. But the production of this soul-returning pill must be very difficult. This isn't cabbage that can be found on the streets. If you say you want it, they can give it to you immediately. Moreover, with your friendship with the Crown Prince, it's already benevolent of the Crown Prince to not trample on you a few more times. Why do you still have the face to ask for it? "Prince, you must help me. You must help me." "Don't be anxious, Empress." The old Prince Qing, who was used to smoothing things over, sighed helplessly. How about this? Let's write a letter to the Emperor of the Divine Province and see if we can purchase a soul-returning pill from their crown princess. What do you think? Empress Lu looked sharply in Duan Yu's direction. He must have a faster way of contacting people. This he definitely has a way, but isn't this old official giving you a way out? Why do you still insist on harping on the crown prince? Don't you see that person's icy expression, heartless and indifferent, completely disregarding you? With his personality, how could he help you send a message to the crown princess of the Divine Province to ask for some soul-returning pill for Rong Li, this dethroned crown prince? Isn't this a joke? Prince Qing still wanted to say something, but Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing, stepped forward and pulled his father back. All right, father, it's faster to have the Ministry of Rites supervise the matter of requesting the soul-returning pill from the crown princess of the Divine Province. Ministry of Rites. The Empress's voice rose an octave. Wouldn't it take a month for the Ministry of Rites to send an official letter to the Divine Province and back? By then, wouldn't it be too late? You just won't help me, is that it? Empress Lu shrieked. Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing, said aloofly, the Empress is mistaken. Since the Empress knows about the soul-returning pill, then you must also be aware of it. The Empress of the Divine Province passed away more than a decade ago, but she could still wake up without any side effects after taking the soul-returning pill. Evidently, this soul-returning pill doesn't have any effect on the human body. Rong Qing said aloofly. In that case, why is your Majesty the Empress in such a hurry? You. The Empress couldn't refute a single word. On the other hand, Prince Li of the first rank and Prince Rue of the first rank nodded at the same time. With a stern expression, they reprimanded. Empress, what the prince said is extremely reasonable. How about this? You go back to Inchan Palace and wait for the news. Don't come out for a few days. Empress Lu's entire face was twisted. She took a deep breath and said in a shrill voice, as the Empress of the Middle Palace, how can this Empress not co-host such a major event as the Crown Prince's ascension to the throne? Duan Yu's icy gaze swept over her, but he did not say anything. He merely waved his hand and said, escort the Empress back to the palace first. Yes, a series of palace maids and mamas swarmed up, surrounding the Empress, whose expression suddenly changed, and went to the Renchuan Palace. Yu, let go. Empress Lu was at her wit's end. These eunuchs and palace maids seemed to have all been bribed by that bastard crown prince. None of them were of one mind. What about Mi Hung? Where's Mi Hung? Empress Lu said angrily. Go away. Have Mi Hung serve this Empress. Reporting to your Majesty the Empress, Sister Mi Hung went to the Sijun room today and has yet to return. Chapter 41:32. Go away. Who are you people? Why have I never seen you before? Empress Lu yelled as she was shoved away. Prince Li of the first rank and Prince Rui looked back and shook their heads speechlessly. This Empress's temperament truly left them speechless. Things had already developed to this extent. Instead of living her days properly, she kept jumping up and down to find trouble with the crown prince. Could it be that she couldn't recognize the current situation? Your Highness. Prince Qing hastily curtsied and said with a smile, let's go to the study to discuss the coronation. Duan Yu nodded and glanced at the corpse lying next to the ice-cold pool. Send the corpse to the Ministry of Rites. If there are any signs of mutation, Duan Yu muttered to himself for a few seconds before coldly ordering, burn it. Yes. The royal guards bowed and left to carry out the order. The prince's hearts trembled slightly, and they immediately shuddered with fear. This crown prince seemed to be even more decisive than before nighttime. Duan Yu left the study and walked towards the side chamber. Naturally, Ing followed closely behind him. After walking silently for a while, Shadow suddenly asked, Your Highness must be tired from today. Go back and rest first. Duan Yu stopped and took out the Jade Messenger talisman from his inner world. He looked down at it. There was a small line of words. Are you well? We were all very worried about you. A faint smile surfaced on his lips, and he took out a talisman pinned to write on it. I'm very well. However, royal father suddenly passed away, so I'm afraid this trip will be delayed. I can't come to the academy for the time being." Just as he was about to put away that jade messenger talisman, he suddenly felt a flicker of light sweep past it. The little stoic's reply actually came so quickly. "It's good that you're fine. Then you should take care of your matters. We'll come find you later." The little fellow must have been paying attention to the jade messenger talisman the entire day for her to reply so quickly. Otherwise, with the little lady's personality, who knew how many days it would take for her to notice the message after she tossed the jade messenger talisman into her inner world. Warmth flowed through Duan Yu's heart. He tightly gripped that jade messenger talisman in his hand and stood there silently for a long time, until Shadow whispered into his ear, "Your Highness, is there anything wrong?" Only then did Duan Yu return to his senses. He shook his head with a smile and said, "Let's go to Benevolence Palace." Ing frowned and said disapprovingly, "Your Highness, you are already very tired today." "Yeah, I'm fine." Duan Yu smiled faintly, his tone apathetic. "I don't want to waste any more time with that person." How could such a precious thing like time be wasted on such a person? Duan Yu's eyes gazed deeply at the dark and gloomy sky in the distance, and his lips curled into a mocking smile. "Let's go to Rinchuan Palace." In the end, Ing didn't say anything. He sighed faintly and followed His Highness to the direction of Rinchuan Palace. If this matter could be settled today, the Crown Prince would be able to calm down and deal with the matters related to his ascension. That's right, the Crown Prince shouldn't be disturbed by such trivial matters at this time. Her footsteps sped up as she followed Duan Yu all the way to Benevolence Palace. Rinchuan Palace was Empress Lu's bedroom. It was originally a dignified, imposing, solemn, and elegant palace. But ever since the Empress was grounded and had nothing to do all day, she would throw around and fight in the palace. Chapter 41-33. It could be said that there wasn't a single good item in the entire palace. Stepping inside, it was truly a scene of ruins and disorder. Meanwhile, Empress Lu was currently sitting on the only bed that could be considered clean as she panted slightly. After her repeated smashing and smashing, Benevolence Palace's furnishings had fallen from its previous grandeur and exquisiteness to the present state where only some ordinary items were placed. Even if Her Majesty the Empress wanted to smash, she could do as she pleased. In any case, they weren't worth much. Today, Her Majesty the Empress had smashed another round. When Duan Yu led Ing into the palace, Senior Royal Maid Mi Hung was currently having some junior eunuchs and junior royal maids tidy up the dilapidated items on the ground. Mi Hung was currently standing beside the Empress with a bent back as she quietly consoled her. The Empress's anger that had originally subsided rapidly flared up again when she looked up and saw Duan Yu. She gloomily glared at Duan Yu with a pair of cold and heavy eyes as she angrily demanded, "You still dare to come? Why wouldn't we dare to come?" Duan Yu gave her a mocking smile and waved his hand. "All of you withdraw. Who dares?" Empress Lu shrieked. Her bloodshot eyes instantly widened to the size of copper bells as she glared fixedly at Duan Yu in front of her. "All of you withdraw." Duan Yu repeated again. The junior royal maids and eunuchs hurriedly prostrated themselves on the ground and said, "Yes." Empress Lu angrily and bitterly scolded their retreating figures, a bunch of dog-like servants. "Who exactly is your master? Open your dog eyes wide and take a good look. All of you come back here. This Empress didn't order you to withdraw, so which one of you dares to disobey this Empress's decree? You also leave." Duan Yu coldly interrupted the Empress's scolding as he coldly stared at Mi Hung, who was standing next to the Empress with her head lowered. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this servant is Her Majesty the Empress's personal senior royal maid. If Her Majesty the Empress doesn't order this servant to leave, this servant naturally cannot leave." "Ing." Duan Yu didn't quarrel with her and merely called out dryly. Ing instantly understood and rushed forward. He picked up Senior Royal Maid Mi Hung and walked outside. Mi Hung instantly shouted in horror, "You? What are you doing? Your Highness the Crown Prince. You can't treat the Empress like that. She is your official mother after all." Your Highness, Your Highness. Her scream did not reach Duan Yu's ears, and Duan Yu quickly brushed her voice to the back of his mind. She looked coldly at Empress Lu in front of her and said with a smile, "What a loyal maid. What do you think, Empress?" Empress Lu looked around the main hall. Only she and Duan Yu were present, so she was naturally well aware of Duan Yu's strength. At this moment, she finally couldn't help but feel afraid. You unfilial son, what are you trying to do?" Empress Lu said angrily. "Unfilial son?" Duan Yu smiled non-committally. "If your father in the underworld knew that you, an unfilial son, treated your official mother like this less than a day after his death, do you think His Majesty would be so angry that he would come back from the underworld to find you? Imperial Father? Do you think Imperial Father will really care about these messy things?" Duan Yu countered with a smile. "Do you think if Imperial Father could care about this matter, your Lu family would really suffer a calamity of extermination?" Empress Lu shrieked harshly. "It really was you. It really was you. You unfilial son. Unfilial son." Chapter 41:34. You actually dared to treat your own official mother like this. If the heavens knew, you would be struck by lightning. You. Pa! A palm wind fiercely landed on Empress Lu's face, sending her flying and crashing heavily onto the bed. Empress Lu was instantly stupefied from the blow. She only felt a scorching pain on her cheeks, which made her so angry that she couldn't stop trembling. You unfilial son. Unfilial son. Duan Yu glanced at her with a sneer. Your son died in the pond long ago. Who are you calling now? You. Empress Lu's lips trembled. My mother's only one person. Duan Yu glanced at her mockingly. You're not worthy. Empress Lu was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Duan Yu looked at her mockingly. Don't die from vomiting blood. Don't worry, your good days have just begun. You really did it, you did it. Empress Lu struggled to sit up on the bed. Her cold and malicious eyes stared fixedly at Duan Yu as she demanded sternly, Why? Why? Did you lose your memory, Your Majesty? You really don't know why our mother died? Did you think that there would be no trace of it after having someone poison the soul-devouring flower into the rouge that my mother usually used? My mother's fingernails were infected with the soul-devouring flower's poison, Duan Yu said mildly as he lowered his gaze. The Empress's eyes abruptly widened, and she almost couldn't adjust her facial expression for a moment. She was actually discovered? I heard that the Empress has several physicians by her side, and she also usually teaches the head royal, Maid Mi Hung, some common medicinal and medical knowledge. The Empress's method is truly impressive. Even if cultivators came to investigate, they wouldn't connect the dots by poisoning a mortal with the soul-devouring flower. That's because this soul-devouring flower is too common. Some female cultivators even specially use it to concoct perfume, and its fragrance assails the nostrils. Who would have thought that this kind of thing that is completely useless to cultivators would be a slow-acting poison to normal people? Bring him in, Duan Yu coldly ordered. Suddenly, a whimpering sound came from the entrance of the palace. An old nanny with long hair draped over her shoulders and a frightened expression was pushed in from the outside. She knelt heavily on the ground. The elderly nanny stared at Duan Yu in horror. She didn't dare to speak and started kowtowing to him first. Who would have thought that Mother Lin, who had served my mother for so many years, would be bribed by the Empress when she just came to the Divine Land? For half a year, Madame Lin has been poisoning my mother. Let the poison seep in her body bit by bit until it explodes at a certain point. Nanny Lin was trembling nonstop as she looked at Duan Yu with a pleading expression. Your Highness, this old servant also had no choice. This old servant didn't want to betray Her Majesty. When my granddaughter arrived in the Divine Land, she was controlled by the Empress's people. This old servant had no other choice. This old servant was forced to do so. Duan Yu looked at her with a sneer. Your entire family must die. Nanny Lin collapsed to the ground at once, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. No, Your Highness, no. My family is innocent. What right do a traitorous servant have to negotiate terms with us? Duan Yu raised his hand, and Ing immediately led people to drag that old biddy out. Oh, trying to adjust the time. Chapter 41:35. Even through the thick palace doors, they could still hear Nanny Lynn's shrill and frantic screams and curses. But soon that voice completely stopped. Even a dozen or so sobbing voices outside all quieted down. The stagnant water was silent. Empress Lu's pupils contracted as she stared at Duan Yu in horror. She only felt that this youth before her was even colder and more heartless than usual. He was indeed beautiful, but when she was stared at by his cold eyes, she truly felt a trace of fear from the bottom of her heart. Yu, what do you want? Empress Lu couldn't resist shouting in a trembling voice. A chill flitted past Duan Yu's lips. His smile was faint, but the ice in his eyes was about to shatter. With a light raise of his left hand, a woman in a blue and white robe with long sleeves slowly and gracefully walked in from outside Benevolence Palace. The woman bowed gracefully at the Empress. "Greetings, Your Majesty the Empress. Who are you?" Fear and hatred flitted through Empress Lu's eyes. She turned to look at Duan Yu and said sternly, "Duan Yu, isn't it enough that you single-handedly helped that medicine woman Qing ascend the throne? Now, where did you find this bitch from? What do you want? His Majesty has already passed away. Even if you... Empress, could it be that you didn't notice that this woman's figure is similar to yours?" Duan Yu interrupted her chatter, his aloof voice faintly ringing by her ear. "So what?" Empress Lu was still unaware that death was imminent. She glared at Duan Yu with resentment and shouted harshly, "Even if you ascend the throne as the Emperor of Tsangzhou, don't forget, I am still your official mother. Even if you're the Emperor of Tsangzhou, I am still the Empress Dowager, who is second only to one person and above everyone else." Empress Lu bellowed angrily. "No matter how high your accomplishments are, disrespecting your official mother is still a serious crime." Duan Yu glanced at her mockingly. Disrespecting your official mother. She was indeed an idiot for daring to spout such nonsense, even at the brink of death. "Open your dog eyes and look carefully," Duan Yu said coldly. With a slight raise of his hand, a young man immediately nodded and walked forward. He took out some medicine and small items and had the woman sit down in front of the dressing mirror. She didn't understand how he did it, but she saw him apply some medicine on the woman's face and pinch it a few times. The woman's expression changed completely. Empress Lu's eyes widened in horror. She pointed at the woman with a trembling finger and cried out repeatedly, You, this woman's face was extremely similar to hers. There was a hint of boniness in the deathly pale face. Wasn't this her own face? They were too alike. Although there were still some differences in the details, at first glance there was really no difference. Normal officials wouldn't dare to stare at the Empress's appearance, so if it was just a glimpse, the woman's disguise was flawless. "Ronly!" Empress Lu shrieked angrily. "What do you think you're doing? You want to find someone to impersonate me? You unfilial son! How dare you treat your own mother like this? You will definitely suffer the wrath of heaven for being so rebellious and die without a burial ground." "Insolence!" Ing roared angrily. Duan Yu, on the other hand, was unconcerned. He raised his hand to block Ing, who wanted to charge forward, and his gaze aloofly landed on Empress Lu. He asked with a smile, "Empress, how about we tell you another secret?" Empress Lu's eyelids twitched fiercely, and her entire body nearly collapsed to the ground. Chapter 41:36. As she gazed at the man who resembled a malicious ghost, she felt her limbs turn ice-cold, and she trembled with fear. What do you want to say?" Empress Lu's lips quivered, and she suddenly felt that her voice was very dry. Duan Yu smiled faintly at her. That smile was truly peerlessly beautiful. Unfortunately, how could the Empress see that handsomeness? Only fear and panic were left in her eyes. "Your son, Ronly, has already died long ago." The Empress's heart shuddered violently, and she retorted coldly, "I know, he drowned in the pond. You sent someone to do it, right? You're a wolf with wild ambitions. Miley has already been crippled, so how could he block your path? Why wouldn't you even let off at a throne crown prince? Such a ruthless heart. It's not like that. Duanyu murmured softly with a deep smile. Your son, Rong Li, has already died long ago in the imperial capital of Dragonflame. He turned into ashes and dissipated from this world. Duanyu pointed at the dust on the ground and said with a smile, Resurrection pill? I naturally have it, but your son doesn't need it all. Duanyu took a step forward and murmured, He has already died long ago, and his soul have been obliterated. Following his words, Empress Lu's eyes nearly oozed blood. She stared fixedly at the malicious ghost in front of her and roared, but she couldn't spit out a single word. Does it hurt? Duanyu placed his hand on his chest and gazed at her coolly. It hurts a lot, right? Don't worry, the pain you inflicted on us back then. Us will return it all to you. Puffed. Empress Lu was truly so infuriated that she spat out a mouthful of blood, and her entire person instantly wilted. Duanyu raised his hand and had the woman dressed like the Empress stand up before gracefully walking 2 rounds. Do I look like her? Duanyu asked Empress Lu with a grin. Empress Lu's face was ghastly pale, and she trembled nonstop. It was as if she was looking at a monster that crawled up from hell. As if it was her first day meeting this Duanyu, large beads of sweat seeped out of her forehead and rolled down. I had her learn palace etiquette for more than a month. From the looks of it now, it really is quite effective. Duanyu remarked dryly. She can have Her Highness's grace now, right? It was more than 70 to 80%. Even her #1 palace maid, Mi Hung, probably wouldn't have any suspicions. Your Majesty has toiled for so many years, so it's time to leave the palace and enjoy life. Duanyu narrowed his eyes at her, revealing a faint carefreeness. You want to become the Empress Dowager who is second only to one and above everyone else? Duanyu chuckled. I'm afraid you won't be able to fulfill your long-cherished destiny in this lifetime. You want to take me out of the palace? You found someone to impersonate me and even wanted to take me out of the palace. What exactly do you want, ah? A silver needle suddenly pierced her back. Empress Lu fell to the ground with a plop. She struggled with all her might, but she felt her limbs go soft, and she couldn't move at all. She tried to move, but she couldn't. At the same time, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th silver needles flew all around her head and neck, piercing her body. Oh! Empress Lu whimpered softly in pain. She stared fixedly at Duanyu, as if she wanted to bite off a piece of his flesh. Duanyu coldly glanced at her. Do you still remember Beauty Wong? She was the woman who poisoned my mother during the Heavenly Ice Snow Region's encirclement and was later discovered by my Jiao. Chapter 41:37. Do you think I don't know who ordered Beauty Wong? You claim to be smart, but you're actually as stupid as a pig. Duanyu looked at Empress Lu and sneered. Not only did you make Beauty Wong take the blame for you, but you also made Beauty Wong take the blame for you. He even ruthlessly sent someone to kill her. Beauty Wong was demoted to a commoner and was killed by your people after she was chased out of the Ice Heaven Snow region. You even suspected that she might have left behind evidence. So after returning to the palace, you sent people to search her maiden residence. You went all the way and killed Beauty Wong's family of 8. You did all of this, right, Your Majesty the Empress? Duanyu gazed at her coldly. At this moment, Empress Lu was lying on the ground, unable to move her limbs. She was in so much pain that she couldn't even speak. Of course, Duanyu didn't expect her to reply. He merely raised his hand and pointed at the woman who resembled the Empress in disguise. She is Beauty Wong's younger sister and the only survivor. Are you happy, Empress? It's time to meet an old friend. Wong Shi walked forward with a silver needle in her hand. Her eyes were cold. Empress Lu opened her mouth, trembling and panicking. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. What do you want? The last silver needle in Wong Shi's hand pierced into the left side of her neck. Ah! Empress Lu let out a low and shrill scream. Wong Shi smiled viciously at her. Suddenly, a packet of powder appeared in her hand. Together with the packet, she fiercely smeared it on the Empress's face. The Empress immediately let out a tragic scream, unable to raise her hands. He only felt that his face was boiling hot, as if it was on fire, or as if his face was being melted by something. His entire face, except for the area around his eyes, had sunk into the inferno of hell. It was too fucking painful. The Empress' limbs trembled on the ground, and her screams became softer and softer. If she could move her body, she would have been rolling on the ground by now. Unfortunately, his acupuncture points were sealed by silver needles, and he couldn't move at all. "Your Majesty, please enjoy your life in the future." Wang Shi smiled coldly and curtsied to her. "This servant will keep the position of Empress Dowager for the Empress." Why? Why wouldn't you kill me?" The Empress's voice was hoarse as she looked up at Duanyu with resentment. "Kill you?" Duanyu curled his lips, revealing a mocking, icy indifference. "Wouldn't killing you be letting you off too easily?" He sneered. "Ask yourself, do you really love your son? Do you love your husband? You don't love anyone. What you love the most is the power and status in your hands. If the Liu family dies, it won't affect your power, so you won't feel heartache. What do you want to say?" The pain in Empress Liu's body was magnified infinitely. Now, she only felt that her hands and feet were numb, and even her neck was so stiff that she could not move. A wooden wheelchair was pushed in front of her. Someone lifted her up and threw her into the wheelchair. Empress Liu snorted heavily. Her eyes were brimming with tears, and her fingers twitched as if it took all the strength in her body to do so. "You will spend the rest of your life in pain and torment." Duanyu sneered at her and threw a mute pill in her mouth with a flick of his finger. Empress Liu opened her mouth, but found that no sound came out. She widened her eyes in horror. Chapter 41:38. Could it be that this heartless man wanted to send her out of the palace and put her under house arrest? To torture her for the rest of her life? No, she couldn't live a life worse than a dog's. She couldn't. She was the Empress of Tsangzhou, the noble daughter of Tsangzhou's Liu Madam. She shouldn't live like this in this lifetime. She couldn't live like this. Empress Liu couldn't help but tremble all over, and her teeth chattered. If she could, she would rather commit suicide than live on without any dignity like she did now. But could she commit suicide? Right now, she really didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. Ronli was truly heartless to this extent, practically comparable to the netherworld ghost's Hellflower. Take her out of the transportation array. Duanyu turned his head and didn't look at the Empress's desolate face again. Was he heartless? Of course he was. Did he regret it? Of course he didn't. Someone humiliated him, trampled on him, and used his power to kill his mother, making it difficult for him to see his mother again in this lifetime. He naturally wanted to take revenge. But this vengeful heart, this ruthless and resolute method. If Jojo knew, would he loathe him? Right now, he couldn't sleep at night. Looking back at the mirror, he almost couldn't tell whether the person in the mirror was a human or a ghost. Was it a night owl or a ghost when we meet again? I wonder if you can still recognize me? Shadow followed him out of Benevolence Palace. After walking silently for a while, he couldn't resist asking in a low voice, "Master, although we nurtured Wang Nei, we've only interacted with her for a little more than 2 months. If in the future Wang Nei harbors a trace of disloyalty..." Duanyu sneered. "Harbor a trace of disloyalty? Then let the Empress Dowager pass away." He only wanted temporary stability. If the Empress Dowager died before he ascended the throne, then the spittle from inside and outside the court would probably drown him. But after he ascended the throne after 1.5 years, wouldn't it be too normal for the Empress Dowager to be depressed and die from illness? When I hold power in my hands, the starlight filling the sky and flowers blooming on the ground can all bloom for me. A faint voice slowly floated in the middle of the night. The group of black-clothed youths behind him instantly knelt on one knee and cupped their hands in unison. "We swear allegiance to His Highness the Crown Prince's life." The light and shadow of the teleportation flashed and disappeared. Empress Liu was pushed out of the teleportation array with a sorrowful look on her face as she wept silently. Looking at the desolate courtyard in front of her, A trace of tragic emotion appeared in the Empress' eyes. The person who came to receive her was a deaf-mute woman. The young man in black made a few hand gestures to her. The deaf-mute woman nodded and pushed Empress Lu's wheelchair inside. In the years that followed, the Empress Dowager stayed in this desolate little courtyard. Every afternoon, the deaf-mute woman would push the Empress Dowager to the high slope behind the small courtyard. He told her to look at the red walls and green tiles in the distance, which were as bright as pearls. She wanted her to watch the new emperor ascend the throne. Amnesty for the world. The city was decorated with lanterns and streamers to congratulate the new emperor on his ascension to the throne. Does your heart ache? You are only half a step away from the Empress Dowager position. Actually, you don't love anyone. You and Imperial Father are a perfect match. People like you only love yourselves far away in the Divine Land's Polarity Hall. Mo Lushing received the news when the sun rose to the east. The Zhangzhou Emperor was gone. He's gone just like that. Bai Wuxia sighed deeply. He slowly put down the cup in his hand and frowned. But calculating the time, it was about time. Chapter 41:39. No matter how much love and hatred, they were all just a drop in the ocean. In a long river of time, they would eventually fade away completely. No one could tell if it was right or wrong. In the end, it would be an empty and fleeting past. At the holy auspicious arena, clamorous shouts sounded again. The drowsy Sir Jojo was startled awake by the noise. She nuzzled her small head in her husband's arms and narrowed her eyes, too lazy to look up. Speaking of which, this competition simply challenged a normal person's bottom line. The competition lasted for 7 consecutive days, regardless of day or night. During these 7 days, they ate, drank, and peed in the arena. Of course, the tea and snacks in the arena were provided for both the morning and evening meals. However, they had to pay for it themselves. You paid to enter the arena to watch the competition, so you naturally had to continue spending money for other expenses. Haha. One had to know that there were more than 50,000 spectators watching the competition this time. Excluding the more than 10,000 cultivators, the remaining spectators were all normal spectators. To make these normal people watch the competition for 7 consecutive days and nights in such a noisy environment, without sleep or rest, this was really fucking satisfying. Sir Jojo felt that if she were a normal person, she definitely wouldn't pay for this torture. She was simply crazy, wasn't she? She had already dozed off a few times. Jojo, why are you so sleepy? The little fatty asked energetically. That's right, we're all cultivators, so why are you so sleepy? A female student from the Royal Academy couldn't resist interjecting. The little stoic was actually able to sleep peacefully under such a burning situation. This was simply too wondrous, all right? Jojo, you can't be your... Qi Xian suddenly thought of something and grabbed her wrist, excitement faintly showing in her eyes. Sir Jojo rolled her eyes and glanced at her, keenly catching the various gazes coming from all around her. She immediately slapped away Qi Xuan's hand in irritation. No, how could she not understand the glint in Xuan's eyes? As a doctor, how could she not know whether she was pregnant or not and how her body's condition was? If she was pregnant, how could she still be like today, jumping around happily everywhere? It wasn't like she was stupid. She was simply worrying for her for nothing. Furthermore, who said that a pregnant person would definitely feel sleepy? Oh, Qi Xian pursed her lips and revealed a disappointed expression. Whether it was a boy or girl, Jojo's child would definitely be exquisite and adorable, right? Would it be a stoic face like Jojo? Student Xian was thinking about all sorts of things. Xiao looked at her in amusement. After being disturbed by them, she woke up half of her drowsiness. Xiao, let me calculate the time. Your second match in the free-for-all arena should be coming soon. Mo Yin lowered his head to glance at the little one before holding her small hand and rubbing her face. Quickly wake up, my Xiao. Do you want to go up and fight in this sleepy state? Xiao Mu speechlessly pulled down his hand and glanced at him before asking, what time is it now? Jojo, look at the points on the black crystal screen. Where am I? Arbor looked at the black crystal screen in the middle of the arena that was as tall as a person and about 10 meters long. You haven't even fought 2 matches, so you're probably in the top 100. As they spoke, the host, Ñoño Duo, suddenly leaped onto one of the arenas and announced with a smile, the second match of the free challenge. Chapter 4140. Student Arbor from the Royal Academy and Hong Shang from the Radiance Academy, please come to the stage immediately. As the host, Ñoño, called out in a loud and excited voice, the crowd surged with emotions and roars. Half of the people in the arena stood up in a frenzy, waving their arms as they chanted Little Crown Princess' name. Our dear Xiao Mu, who had been dozing off, was inexplicably energized, and she blinked at the dense crowd around her. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but rub his forehead and sigh. Io, look at Jojo's rallying power. He hasn't even gone up yet, but the crowd is already so excited. Right, looks like everyone's the same as me. Qin Jiu exclaimed excitedly. We're all waiting to see this battle. Whoosh whoosh. 2 figures flew onto the revolving arena from the Royal Academy and the Radiance Academy, respectively. Hong Shang from the Radiance Academy. Royal Academy, Arbor. Please advise us. Arbor and Hong Shang raised their hands and saluted at the same time, then flew up into the air. Hong Shang's first move was a palm containing 60% of her divine power, which flew over. The mighty divine power wrapped in a cluster of flames flashed in her palm. If it were anyone else, they would naturally be sent flying by her palm. But who was Arbor? When he saw her palm flying over, he immediately leaped into the air and flew forward, receiving her palm expressionlessly. After a loud bang, the 2 people's hair fluttered and their clothes fluttered. They were blown by a fierce gust of wind. Their clothes fluttered and their sleeves fluttered. Hong Shang's expression changed slightly, and she reached out to stroke her slightly numb right arm. She abruptly raised her head to look at Arbor. You're not a level 3 spiritual master? How is that possible? How could a level 3 spiritual master possibly receive her? Hong Shang's palm? It's obvious. Arbor pulled out a black ferrule from his conscience and suspended it in midair. His eyes sparkled, revealing the joy of meeting a worthy opponent. Setting aside her arrogant attitude from before, this girl's cultivation was still pleasing to the eye. It was rare to meet a young girl whose cultivation was on par with hers, so she naturally wanted to have a good spar. You. Hong Shang's eyes flashed with disbelief. What is your cultivation level? Arbor blinked and took off the aura concealing talisman hanging on his waist. In a split second, everyone could only see that the little girl's aura was suddenly rising, and her cultivation was rising rapidly. His vast and mighty divine power spread out in all directions. Floating light flickered, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Take one of my moves first. Arbor kicked slightly with the tip of his foot, and his body once again leaped several feet into the air. In the blink of an eye, several tens of lines of fire swept down along the ferrule. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They were like exploding fireworks as they assaulted Hong Shang in unison. Hong Shang hurriedly stretched out his hand to lay down a fire spirit defensive shield. His expression was solemn as he pulled out a long sword from his consciousness and blocked the attack. More than 10 lines of fire wrapped around her body at a ferocious speed. Through the fire spirit defensive shield, a series of explosive sounds rang out like that of green bamboo. Hong Shang took a few steps back, and a trace of disbelief appeared on her face. A level 2 divine master? No, it couldn't be. His cultivation level looked like a level 2 divine master, but the extent of his divine power was actually comparable to a level 5 or 6. How could it be like this? Why did you put an aura concealing talisman on your body? Hong Shang gritted her teeth and said angrily. Arbor lowered his head and glanced at her. His expression was neither fast nor slow as he said indifferently, to trick people. Why else? Chapter 4141. Sir Jojo felt that this woman's question was simply a bit laughable. If she wasn't trying to trick people, why would she hang so many aura-concealing talismans on her body? Yes, they were so many, so many. A level 1 aura-concealing talisman reduced one's cultivation by 5 levels, but her multiple aura-concealing talismans could be adjusted up to 20 levels. She couldn't possibly adjust herself to such an outrageous minor realm like level 10 Mystic Cultivator, right? She was already being disdained to this extent after being adjusted to level 3 Spiritual Cultivator. Humph! If she really adjusted herself to level 10 Mystic Cultivator, wouldn't she be stabbed to death by people's gazes? What did her cultivation have to do with a bunch of people who worried about her? Even if she was only a little level 10 Mystic Cultivator right now, humph, Jojo's Lotus was still Jojo's, and no one could snatch it away. The little stoic revealed a bewitching smile at Hong Shang across from her. If this mechanical smile with a crack at the corner of her mouth was called a smile, then this smile of hers was too frightening, Hong Shang thought. Withdrawing his gaze, Hong Shang lowered his eyes, and the sword in his hand abruptly overflowed with flames and expanded explosively. The fire spear in her hand slowly swayed in her palm, slowly splitting into 4, 5, 6 clumps. Boom! The green flames transformed into several arm-length green eagles. They screeched as they charged in the little stoic's direction to surround her. At the same time, the fire spirit barrier around Hong Shang couldn't hold on any longer and abruptly transformed into a fire spirit barrier, blocking in front of him. Even so, Arbor couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for her. After all, not just anyone could control a full-body defensive fire spirit barrier. As expected of a gifted disciple of Glory City, she was indeed different from those children of ordinary large patrician families. However, even though her dark green fire spirit transformed into several eagle spirits and encircled Arbor, their speed was still too slow in the little stoic's eyes. Too slow. The little stoic took a step in midair and arrived in front of one of the eagle spirits in an instant. She clenched her fist and instantly swung it at the eagle spirit's head. In the blink of an eye, that eagle spirit, which was half a person's height, turned into nothingness under the little stoic's fist. Hong Shang's body trembled slightly as his divine power dispersed. The little stoic smashed that eagle spirit with a punch, which immediately drew raucous cheers from the audience. Amidst these roars, the stoic face once again strode in front of another spirit hawk. From the moment he punched to the heavy blow, everything was done in one breath. That unlucky eagle spirit was once again reduced to scattered divine power in her hands. Hong Shang's face turned even paler as he let out a sharp whistle, summoning the remaining eagle spirits to his side. No sooner said than done. Emerald green with spiritual energy seeped out from the little stoic's hand. A wisp of wood spirit, which had taken the form of a man-eating flower, swayed gently on her porcelain white palm. In a matter of minutes, he landed on the ground. Amidst the cries of the crowd, the man-eating flower rapidly grew to the height of an adult, the height of 2 adults, the height of 3 adults looking down from above. It opened its ferocious mouth and bit down at the tiny Hong Shang, whose face was filled with terror. Fast, so fast that no one could react immediately. Hong Shang was indeed not an ordinary person. With a high jump, she was already enveloped by several eagle spirits, burning with green flames, and flew into the sky. Arbor's gaze chilled. Seeing her fly off the ground, he didn't say another word and directly swung a giant water spirit palm. The giant, transparent water palm pressed down, and Hong Shang raised her hand to block it. Chapter 41-42. However, the giant palm instantly expanded in the air as the light and shadow appeared. It blocked above her head like it was covering the sky and the sun. It slammed down heavily. Hong Shang raised her hands high above her head, but felt the giant palm pressing down like a mountain. It was heavy and carried a majestic aura as it slammed down. It slammed her entire body down heavily. Her calves were heavily pressed, and were embedded in the arena. Her entire body was shortened by a small amount. The defensive wall in front of her instantly shattered into pieces. Hong Shang made a prompt decision, slapping the ground with both hands. She suddenly flew up from the ground of the arena. The giant transparent palm, formed by the water spirit, once again pressed down from the sky. Hong Shang's movements were very quick. Her body had already leapt into the air. The numerous fire spirits in her hands transformed into giant eagles that pecked at the giant palm. This woman had 8 levels of fire spirit power, and her aura was very strong. Those few eagle spirits charged at the water spirit's giant palm. When the two came into contact, red and blue lights were released like fireworks. The giant eagles, formed by 8 levels of fire spirits, seemed to cry out, flapping their wings and flying forward, roasting the water spirit's giant palm in front of them. A group of outsiders watching the show couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for the little crown princess. In their view, this battle was really too dangerous. The little crown prince stood on a giant man-eating flower that was swaying its head, controlling the water spirit's giant palm to attack Hong Shang. Hong Shang, however, seemed to be handling the situation with ease and ease. The sword in her hand was completely red, as if it was a blazing sword that was surrounded by layers of fire spirits. The sword in her hand chopped and stabbed, making it so that not even a drop of water could pass through. Her moves were also very quick and fierce. In just a few minutes, she had exchanged a dozen moves with the little crown princess. The water spirit's giant palm pressed down like a group of mountains. Hong Shang's expression changed slightly. She was once again slapped down by the giant palm and was directly pressed into the original hole in the arena. Arbor's graceful reflection was like a flowing wind, arriving in front of Hong Shang in a few breaths. At the same time, that blooming man-eating flower was waving its branches and leaves in the wind. It lowered its head and bit at Hong Shang's head. Instantly, there was a wave of frightened cries. Hong Shang's expression abruptly changed, and before he could even turn around to resist, he felt his vision darken. A serene and refreshing fragrance flooded into her body from all directions. The crowd was stirred up, and there were even some who couldn't help but jump up. His eyes were focused on the fight on the stage. Mother, it was Eaton. How could ordinary people understand what was going on? He only knew that the little girl's emerald green man-eating flower could actually swallow half of the other party's body in one gulp. Hong Shang was currently hanging upside down in the air. Everything above his stomach had been eaten by the man-eating flower. Only 2 legs were left, kicking chaotically in the air. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. The One-Star Radiance Academy students couldn't help but stand up and glare angrily at the stoic-faced little crown princess in the arena. The little crown princess found the accusatory look on her face a little strange. What? Wasn't life and death in the arena a matter of fate? She hadn't even dealt with their senior sister Hong yet, and they were already glaring at her with such resentment? What a strange bunch of people. Arbor glanced at them indifferently and asked in a clear and cold voice, "Let me ask you, do you concede?" The expressions of everyone from Radiance Academy changed. Chapter 41-43. They did not think that this little crown princess would have such a strange temperament. It turned out that she came to the stage to compete with senior sister Hong, with the intention of beating her until she was convinced. Senior sister Hong was their Radiance Academy's most talented senior sister and also the granddaughter of Minister Hong. She was such a proud person. How could she lower her head in front of the crown princess in front of everyone? Not to mention admitting defeat. It was impossible for him to admit defeat verbally. Radiance Academy's Cha Pinchao quickly stood up and shouted, "Crown Princess, my senior sister Hong admits defeat. Please let her go." Arbor blinked and pretended to be puzzled. "I don't think I heard her say the word admit defeat." Everyone could not help but look at her speechlessly. "You've already released the man-eating flower and ate half of her head into her stomach. Even if she wants to admit defeat, she won't be able to open her mouth, okay?" Chop Pinch Out cupped his hands at her and said with a faint expression, Sorry, Crown Princess. My senior sister Hong was too arrogant and rude. Please be magnanimous and let her go. How could she be excused for her previous actions just by saying that she was arrogant and rude? How could it be such an easy thing? Arbor's mouth could not help but curl up into a cold smile. Previously, she walked in front of Sir Jojo with her nose in the air and asked her to leave her husband. She really wanted to ask this Miss Hong Shang, where did you get your confidence from? In her life, she hated those who had nothing to do and always liked to look at others with a pair of disdainful eyes. Simply creating trouble out of nothing. I want her to admit defeat to me personally. Arbor coldly stared at Cha Pin Chow. Can you make this decision for her? If you can't, then stop talking nonsense. A female student from Radiance Academy could not help but shout at the two hosts. What are you guys still standing there for? Quickly announced the end of the competition. Nyo and Duo looked at each other and revealed a helpless smile to the crowd of Radiance Academy students. Sorry, your school's senior sister Hong Shang did not admit defeat, nor did she fall off the stage according to the rules. The match can still continue. What? The students of Radiance Academy roared in dissatisfaction one after another. Are you guys crazy? If this goes on, are you trying to kill our senior sister Hong? If Hong Shang was engulfed by the man-eating flower for a long period of time, his upper body would slowly be invaded and devoured by the power of the wood spirit. What kind of joke was this? This wasn't considered a loss? Why is this competition so dogmatic? You're not done yet. You're nagging nonstop. So much nonsense. Xiaomu abruptly beckoned at that man-eating flower. Immediately, everyone saw that the man-eating flower that was originally several feet tall had turned into specks of wood spirit star halo in the air, all of which were absorbed into her palm. The group from Radiance Academy looked at their senior sister, Hong Shang, with a heavy expression as she fell from the sky in a daze. Senior sister, Ma, seeing that Hong Shang was about to land on the ground. The two hosts breathed a sigh of relief and were about to announce the end of the competition. Everyone instantly widened their eyes in horror. They saw the little stoic charge forward and suddenly land a heavy punch on Hong Shang's delicate face. Puffed. Hong Shang spat out a mouthful of fierce blood. She was sent flying by this vicious punch. Chapter 41-44. However, this wasn't the end. The little girl leaped into the air as fast as a flood dragon escaping from a rabbit and abruptly teleported in front of Hong Shang. Her foot landed heavily on Hong Shang's back, sending her plummeting from the sky. At this time, the two hosts were completely stupefied. They tightly clutched the loudspeaker and blinked. Just as they were about to heave a sigh of relief and immediately announce the end of the match, they saw the little girl's savage figure flash to Hong Shang's side again, and her fist landed on Hong Shang's other cheek. She directly sent Hong Shang flying half a day into the air again. Everyone simultaneously wrote a large fuck. In their minds, pairs of dog eyes couldn't resist glowing as they stared at the little girl's nimble figure flashing back and forth, gasping in amazement. The little stoic was as fast as lightning and thunder. She flashed, and flashed again, punching, kicking, smashing, and throwing in all sorts of ways. Everyone only saw Hong Shang bouncing back and forth in the air, not landing on the ground for a long time. They couldn't resist covering their eyes. The little crown princess was too savage after a torrential beating. The little crown princess finally kicked Hong Shang back to the ground. Do you admit defeat? The little girl asked with a rather nasty expression. Did this girl feel very wronged? Sir Jojo still had a belly full of anger in his heart. Did a person jump out and say that she had some relationship with the crown prince's maternal grandfather and order her around? Simply laughable. Everyone from Glory Academy instantly recovered their wits and jumped up in surprise. You actually treat senior sister Hong like this? Senior brother Cha, what do you think of this? Cha Pincho's expression was naturally unsightly. Their Glory Academy's number 1 or 2 senior sister, Hong, challenged the little stoic crown princess, but she was actually beaten up like this and was now in such a sorry state. Arbor raised a finger at the people from Glory Academy and stared disdainfully at them. You don't admit defeat? Come and fight. Glory Academy's Hong Gui challenges Royal Academy's Arbor. Glory Academy's Zhou Bao challenges Royal Academy's Arbor. Glory Academy. Several Glory Academy students stood up in succession. Arbor glanced over coldly and waved his hand. Come. Judging from his disdainful appearance, he completely didn't take these male students from Glory Academy seriously. They were originally hot-blooded youths, so how could they endure such provocation? The eyes of the students from Radiance College turned cold, and they instantly jumped up. Without saying a word, they dashed towards the stage. Hey, you guys! The host, Duo exclaimed, this is against the rules. You can't come up. It's not the team battle yet. Wait, several Glory Academy students drew out their weapons from their conscience and ruthlessly hacked at Xiaomu. Several streaks of lights glory tees. She's tees T-test. Everyone's a fuck. The Glory Academy students were surrounded by the sand scorpion swarm that blotted out the sky. The scene was as silent as snow. The two hosts' mouths were agape, but they couldn't utter a sound for a long time. As expected, this was the free challenge competition. The fights didn't follow common sense at all. It was unexpected and rather willful. I'm going to sleep. Make up for 2 more chapters tomorrow. Chapter 41-45. Set up the formation. The boy called Zhoubao shouted. The remaining 3 people immediately raised their swords and brandished them a few times. The 4 people stood in 4 corners, surrounding the bruised and swollen Hong Shang in the center. The 4 defensive walls connected like an iron bastion, blocking the endless sand scorpions. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. Hong Shang moved his neck and slowly raised one of his palms. She struggled to crawl up from the ground and staggered a few steps. When she raised her head, everyone saw her extremely wretched appearance. Not to mention her disheveled hair and crooked mouth. Both sides of her face were bruised for being punched. With a head full of bumps, she swayed as she stood there, gnashing her teeth and inhaling sounds coming from her throat. This fellow had clearly been beaten senseless by the little stoic's violent beating. Even now, she was still a bit dizzy and hadn't recovered her wits. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. Several Glory Academy students hurriedly called out. Hong Shang raised a hand and swung her disheveled hair. She gnashed her teeth and glared at Arbor, who was outside the defensive walls. The little stoic stood in the sea of sand scorpions and stared at her, as usual. Her eyes were without ripples of emotion, neither joy nor sorrow. Rise! She shouted an incantation, and the ferrule flew out of her hand, rapidly spinning in midair with a whoosh. Boom! It heavily smashed into one of the walls. The 4 Glory Academy boys hiding inside the wall simultaneously took a step back. The entire wall shrunk inwards, and sizzling sounds came from outside the wall. Hong Shang abruptly straightened her body, and with trembling arms, she took out a pill from her inner world and hastily swallowed it. At the same time, the pitch-black ferrule circled in the air before returning to the little stoic's hand with a whoosh. An endless stream of sand scorpions crawled over, noisily crawling towards the top of the 4 walls. Senior Sister Hong. Set up the formation. Hong Shang wielded her treasured sword and slashed out a lightning-like blaze in the air. Her figure abruptly moved, and the 4 people abruptly drew close to the center. Their backs were pressed against each other, and the light of their swords intertwined, setting up a 5-piece defensive formation. Hong Shang threaded her way out from the middle of the 4 people, and her figure rose up. He raised his sword in the air and held it horizontally across his chest. A strong sword intent came out of the sword and swooped down on the scorpions on the outer wall. The sword whistled, and the sword intent fell, slashing a 3-foot-wide crack in the arena. Originally, he thought that under this chop, countless sand scorpions would be chopped off the stage. But to his surprise, only one of the scorpions was left alive. They continued to crawl toward the 2 sides of the crack in an orderly manner. Rustle, 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 the crawling speed was very fast. In just a moment, layer upon layer, densely packed together, crawling along the 4 smooth defensive walls. The onlookers only felt that this was a visual shock. In front of him was a sea of sand scorpions extending endlessly. The icy and emotionless little stoic, dressed in snow-white school uniform, strolled over leisurely in this black ocean. A green hairband was faintly discernible in her hair, making her look very elegant. Wall break. A cold glint flashed through the little stoic's eyes, and the startled swan dagger flew out from her conscious with a whoosh, scuttling to the front of the defensive wall at lightning speed. There was a buzzing sound as it tore through the air. One of the 4 defensive walls was abruptly broken open by the startled swan dagger. Like a shattered mirror, it shattered into powder with a whoosh, and spiritual energy diffused everywhere. Everyone simultaneously stood up and couldn't help but cheer. Chapter 41-46. Qi Xianxian also jumped up and angrily rolled up her sleeves. Scoundrels! How dare they gang up on my Jojo? I think they must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Xianxian, don't be impatient. The little fatty hastily pulled her back. Look at our Jojo. He's handling it with ease and is clearly enjoying himself. Everyone silently glanced at the little fatty and couldn't resist ridiculing him in their minds. Bro, you've hit the nail on the head. The little stoic's expression didn't change in the slightest when she was surrounded and attacked, and her appearance was even more relaxed and at ease. Moreover, who exactly was ganging up on who? Could it be that it wasn't the little stoic who summoned that sea of sand scorpions that blotted out the sky and covered the earth? The startled swan dagger spun in the air and returned to Arbor's conscious with a whoosh. In the blink of an eye, Arbor summoned Thunderclap and flew above the 5 people's heads with his sword. The third style of the 9th Heaven's Thunderclap art, infinite swords returned to origin, instantly descended. It was as if the galaxy had shattered and eternity had been destroyed. Substantial sword lights and broken shadows that blotted out the sky abruptly flowed down from the sky. The 5 people from Glory Academy, including Hong Shang, were all ashen and utterly defeated. Hong Shang was even more incredulous, and she hastily threw out several dozen defensive talismans to form a formation around herself. She didn't even care about her 4 companions' lives. Right now, she only wanted to preserve her own life first. She already had no time to care about anything else. The sword shadows were like rainbows as they crashed down with a bang. Accompanied by the sizzling power of thunder and lightning, the sword lights sealed off their escape routes in all directions. It only took a few seconds. The 4 Glory Academy disciples were flung away with a blood-curdling scream. The sword lights enveloped Hong Shang. They directly shattered the defensive talisman formation around her into broken shadows. Everyone was stunned and held their breaths in anticipation. However, they saw the sword lights that streaked down from the sky condense into a sword shadow that floated in the air and aimed at Hong Shang's heart. The little stoic floated in the air and flashed in front of Hong Shang. She guided the sword with 2 fingers, her face as still as water and her eyes as cold as frost. Do you admit defeat or not? Hong Shang subconsciously took a small step back due to her sudden increase in aura. He raised his head and breathed heavily. His gaze was fixed in midair without blinking. His heart was filled with shock and surprise. Who was this woman? How could his control of sword intent be so perfect? The sword will condensed into one in the air, and it could actually stop in midair so terrifyingly. It floated in front of her and obediently listened to her orders? Since you're convinced, why don't you kneel? Arbor scolded coldly. His eyes were clear and calm as he looked down at the woman before him. It wasn't that she wanted to make things difficult for this woman. Instead, she wanted everyone in Glory City to know that those who dared to provoke her and embarrass her in front of everyone would pay 100 times the price of losing face. Hong Shang stood stiffly on the spot and didn't say anything for a long time. Arbor raised her eyebrows impatiently. Looks like you're just not convinced. If that's the case, what's the point of keeping you alive? I'm impressed. Zhou Bao and the other 3 male students from Glory City immediately knelt down on one knee and cupped their hands. It was us who were arrogant. If we have offended the crown princess in any way, please forgive us. Arbor coldly swept a glance over them. Her gaze once again fell on Hong Shang. Her eyes were as cold as ice and extremely callous. You're not convinced? Her clear voice revealed traces of chilliness. The killing intent around her slowly rose in an instant. I'm impressed. Senior Sister Hong, I'm impressed. Chapter 41-47. Arbor's cold gaze shot toward Zhou Bao and the rest. Does she have something to say? Does she need you to answer for her? Shut up. Zhou Bao and the rest bitterly smiled as they took a few steps back. Their eyes trembled as they looked at their surroundings. Speaking of which, it's strange. The sand scorpions that covered the sky had already stopped and were lying dormant on the ground, not moving an inch. However, Zhou Bao and the rest were clear that if they were to make any movements, the sand scorpions would definitely make a move and surround them again. Your Highness, Cha Pinchao led a few Glory Academy's disciples and hurriedly came to Immerse's side. He bowed and asked, "Can you come out and mediate? For this matter to escalate to such a state, His Highness also has an unshirkable responsibility, right?" If His Highness had told Senior Sister Hong about the young crown Prince Consort's true cultivation level from the start, Senior Sister Hong would not have been so impulsive as to go up and fight the young crown Prince Consort on the arena. Immerse was too lazy to even lift her eyelids. She only coldly glanced at him and said, "You're asking for trouble." Cha Pincho's heart was instantly filled with anger. Although he disdained Hong Shang, this foolish woman, he still came from Glory City with her. Hong Shang had lost so much face. As Glory City's disciples, how could they have any face? Naturally not. Immerse indifferently glanced at Cha Pinchao and sneered in her heart. Today, if these Glory City's disciples had even the slightest bit of respect for him, the young city lord, they wouldn't have come to provoke him and find trouble with his wife. He usually doesn't live in Glory City. All these years, his grandfather has been living in the capital, taking care of his mother. Usually, he's very negligent in managing Glory City's affairs. Currently, Glory City has 3 great consecrators jointly managing it. Hong Shang's grandfather, Great Consecrator Hong, is one of them. It seems that after so many years, some people can no longer differentiate who is the true master of Glory City. Since they dared to be so arrogant, they should be prepared to dig their own graves. Your Highness! Immerse finally raised her eyes and looked at Cha Pinchao. Cha Pinchao was instantly frozen by the coldness in his eyes. He didn't even dare to move his upper body. The gaze of the man before them was truly a bit frightening. Within his sharp gaze was a trace of chilliness. In an instant, it was as if a smear of ice and snow had melted their hearts. It made everyone's breathing tighten involuntarily. You asked for it. His Highness the Crown Prince's cold voice caused the hearts of all the students of Radiance Academy to sink. It seemed that they had thoroughly offended the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess today. Cha Pinchao was furious. He could not help but secretly scold Miss Hong for being brainless. He had already said that if they wanted to provoke him, they had to do their homework. Now, after provoking the Crown Princess, he was put on the spot. It's rare for Glory City to roam the world, and the number of people who participate in the various competitions is even fewer. He never thought that the first time he participated in a competition, he would lose in such an unsightly manner. From now on, it's hard to guarantee that Glory City won't be left with a bad impression of fishing for fame and not living up to its name. Cha Pinchao took a deep breath and turned his head to look at the stage. With this look, he couldn't help being so angry that the veins on his forehead were about to burst. Chapter 41-48. The stage was surrounded by layers of sand scorpions. It was unknown what the little stoic had done, but Hong Shang, who was originally standing in front of her, was now flushed red from suffocation, and her body was shrinking inch by inch. Her knees made cracking sounds, and before they broke, she collapsed to the ground with a bang. Her head was firmly stuck to the ground, as if something was pressing down on it. A trace of frigid mockery flitted through Arbor's eyes, and his voice was apathetic and icy. "Why are you being so courteous? Just stand up and speak." As soon as he finished speaking, he moved his finger and pulled a gravity talisman out of Hong Shang's body. Hong Shang instantly felt her body lighten, and her face turned green and red from anger. The instant she jumped up, she still wanted to charge forward and fight the little stoic. Suddenly, she heard the hosts Nyonyo and Duodwa's anxious cries. Royal Academy Arbor wins the free challenge competition. Awarded 100 points. "You're wrong." Arbor faintly interrupted that host's words and cast a chilly glance at them. It was as if they were frozen by something. The two hosts were tongue-tied and instantly fell into a state of silence, as if they were mutes. In the first round, Hong Shang provoked me. In the second round, Hong Shang's group of 5 provoked me together. How should these points be calculated? The two hosts instantly understood and said in unison without any integrity, "There is a free challenge competition." Royal Academy Arbor fought 1 against 5 and won 2 rounds in a row. Awarded 1,000 points. "Everyone, do you have to yield to evil forces like this?" "Arbor, I want to kill." Hong Shang flew into a rage out of humiliation. She clenched her fist tightly and was about to charge forward. Suddenly, she saw a moon-white figure flash and abruptly fall in front of her. Hong Shang looked up in a daze and mumbled, "Your Highness." Suddenly, Yin flicked her sleeve and struck her in the mouth and nose, pushing her away heavily. "Hong Shang, you've been expelled from Glory City," Yin said with chilly eyes. "We will personally send a message to Grandfather to explain this matter." Hong Shang was flabbergasted and couldn't react for a long time. When her brain finally returned to normal, she clearly understood the Crown Prince's meaning. She couldn't help but shout angrily, "On what basis? Your Highness the Crown Prince. What right do you have to slap?" Hong Shang's face was once again slapped across the air. "Wah!" Hong Shang's face was so swollen that it was unbearable to look at. His Highness the Crown Prince wasn't a soft-hearted JoJo with a stoic face. He knocked Hong Shang to the ground in 2 moves, and he couldn't get up again. Blood flowed out of his mouth. Naturally, he could no longer speak. "Your Highness." Cha Pinchao could not help but clasped his hands and said, although senior apprentice Sister Hong was disrespectful in the first place and made a small mistake, but now she has already received the punishment she deserves. She, Consecrated Cha, wants to be like Consecrated Hong? Floating? Cha Pinchao felt a chill in his heart and immediately shut his mouth. He hadn't expected the Crown Prince to know them like the back of his hand. They had never met the Crown Prince before, but the Crown Prince knew at a glance that he was Cha Pinchao, the grandson of great Consecrated Cha. Taking a deep breath, Cha Pinchao knew that this Crown Prince wasn't someone to be trifled with. He took a step back, clasped his hands, and said, "Then I'll take senior apprentice Sister Hong away to treat her injuries." Hong Shang has already been expelled from Glory City. From now on, there will be no Hong Shang in Glory City's Glory Academy. At this moment, Hong Shang felt a trace of fear. Her face was filled with panic as she looked at the Crown Prince and whimpered. Chapter 41-49. The Crown Prince naturally ignored her and only swept her a cold glance in the end before looking at his wife with furrowed brows and lowered eyes. "Jojo, are you tired?" Arbor shook his small head and thought, "I'm not tired. It's just that I was too annoyed by Hong Shang's entanglement earlier. Instead of fighting her properly, Hong Shang only wanted to quarrel with her. I really don't know what she's thinking." The little fellow tilted her head with a displeased expression. Why is this Hong Shang so weak? Wasn't she a second-level god apotheosis master? Her cultivation level should be the same as hers, and there shouldn't be much of a difference. But after exchanging blows, the little stoic immediately discovered that the divine power in Hong Shang's body didn't even reach 1% of hers. She was also a second-level god apotheosis master. If Arbor's power was as vast as the sea of stars, then Hong Shang might only be a small ditch. Mo Yin couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. She pulled the little fellow's hand and said, "Why do you always compare yourself with that kind of idiot? With your current cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem for you to challenge a 5th level or 6th level god apotheosis master alone." "You challenge her?" Arbor blinked and said in all seriousness, "It was her who challenged me. She has a good eye." Mo Yin couldn't resist twitching her mouth, and she nodded repeatedly in amusement. Right. It was her who foolishly challenged my Jojo. How can her cultivation, which was piled up by pills, be a match for you?" Arbor nodded pensively. Although pills could allow cultivators to advance quickly, if they took pills at every level and rapidly raised their cultivation level by 5 or 6 levels, then their cultivation wouldn't advance too far in the end and would probably stop at a certain point. Sir Jojo tilted his small head at him and whispered something to him. Mo Yin knitted her brows at first to express her unwillingness, but then she reluctantly nodded and squeezed his small hand. "Then your husband will be below the stage, watching you from afar. You have to be good." Arbor was speechless. Wasn't she just fighting? How was she not obedient? Then he turned around and looked at the hosts, Nyo and Duo, who had already eaten a stomach full of dog food and had a somewhat hopeless expression. With a clear voice, he said, "Set the stage." The ears of Nyo and Duo twitched, and their spirits were lifted. They were completely excited. At this moment, the crowd below was already cheering. "Set up the arena! Set up the arena!" It was only the first night of the competition, yet someone had already set up an arena. One had to know that the earlier they set up the arena, the harder it would be to deal with them. After all, a person's experience was limited. If he was continuously challenged by others, it was very likely that his strength would be exhausted, and in the end, he would be taken advantage of by others. One had to know that if one could defeat the arena master, they would be able to obtain the points that the arena master had set up. If the arena master won 10 matches in a row and was challenged off the stage in the 11th match, the challenger would be able to obtain 2,000 points. It was a considerable number. "Set up the arena!" Duo shouted passionately, her big eyes flashing with a strange bright luster. Heads of the aristocratic families, young masters, young mistresses, and everyone watching the competition. Hello, everyone. On the first night of the Tianyuan competition, just before dawn, our Royal School's student representative requests to set up the arena. Set up the arena. Duo's excited voice was trembling. Nyo, who was beside her, shouted even louder than her. "That's right. Now, we announce that arena number 6 has been successfully set up. Arena Master, Royal School's Student Arbor." Chapter 4150. Congratulations to Student Arbor for successfully setting up the arena. The corners of eldest young Master Chen's eyes twitched. He felt that the hosts on the stage were hilarious, facing an expressionless stoic face. They could still so generously and passionately continue their speech without feeling awkward at all. Duo even pulled up Student Arbor's little hand and waved her little paw. "I announce, Student Arbor, the Imperial Academy representative, the arena will begin." The little crown princess was expressionless, even though her little paw was being shaken excitedly in the air. "Now, we invite anyone to challenge the arena master. The arena master will get 100 points for winning a match. Winning 5 matches will get 800 points. Winning 10 matches will give 2,000 points. The higher the winning streak, the higher the points. Defeating the arena master will give you all the points after the arena master sets up the arena." The entire audience was in an uproar. Immediately, some students stood up, unable to remain calm. But very quickly, someone grabbed the arm of this hot-headed student and motioned for him to look at the pitch-black arena. Everyone's boiling hot blood seemed to have been doused with a bucket of cold water, instantly chilling their hearts. What kind of joke was this? Go up and be bitten by the sand scorpions? Now that the arena was filled with sand scorpions, whoever went up would be unlucky. Moreover, just now, Even if 5 people from the Glory Academy were unable to throw Arbor off the stage. Now, him, him, what ability did he have to throw the Imperial Academy's Arena Master off the stage? Instructor He from the Umbra Academy warmly and courteously congratulated Principal Yun. Student Arbor from your academy is really amazing. Principal Yun gladly accepted this compliment and was very pleased with himself. His academy student had made such a big splash, and as the principal, he naturally felt honored. It would be strange if he wasn't pleased with himself. Take a look. Who could be like their Imperial Academy students and set up the arena before the first day had even ended? Who had the courage to set up the arena at this time? Only the Imperial Academy. Ah ha ha ha. The Imperial Academy is mighty. The Imperial Academy will win. The group of idiots around him raised their arms and cheered, each louder than the last. Hearing this, Joei Academy's Principal Li Xiangbei couldn't help but smile insincerely as he nodded at Yin Piaomiao. As the main force of the Academy's home ground, how could he not be angry that the Royal Academy's overall score was not even higher than the Royal Academy's? Joei City was his home, and the Joei Battle Arena had a good relationship with the Joei Academy. Even so, the Royal School still managed to gain the upper hand. You go up and challenge him, Li Xiangbei said in a deep voice to a man in black sitting beside him. The man immediately stood up and cupped his fists. Yes, Dean. Instructor Broadaxe couldn't help but frown and kindly remind him, isn't this a bad idea? One had to know that the man called up by the dean was not a student of their academy. He was actually the dean's personal guard, Zhang Chunlong, who had the power of a level 3 god-tier master. Although Zhang Chunlong looked young, he was actually more than 40 years old and was a speed and strength-type god-tier master. Green Hair had been beaten up by the Imperial Academy students at the entrance of the battle arena, and Arbor had knocked Jiang Luxue off the stage with a single move. This made Dean Li Xiangbei of the Joei Academy lose face. He was trying his best to regain some face. Chapter 41-51. If this defending champion of the Royal School was kicked off the stage by a student from the Joei Academy in the first round, they would definitely become the laughingstock of this heavenly Yuan competition. Thinking of this, Li Xiangbei's face revealed a sinister smile. Across the sea of heads, he clasped his hands in the direction of Yun Piaomiao and smiled. Principal Yun, your little disciple is indeed extraordinary, and the beast horde he controls is also quite impressive. But this disciple of mine from the Joei Academy is also not bad. Li Xiangbei laughed and said, if I accidentally hurt your girl, you won't blame me, right? I want you dead. I want you to die 100 deaths without reincarnation. A cold voice sounded from Li Xiangbei's side. Li Xiangbei's breathing became sluggish as he stiffly turned his neck to look at Prince Imo, who had a cold expression on his face. Prince Imo had seen the little girl leave the stage and had given his wife some instructions. Now that he had come down, he heard Li Xiangbei's death-seeking words. I want you dead. I want you to die 100 deaths without reincarnation. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. The people around the crown prince sat upright and still, not daring to make sound. An extremely cold voice faintly lingered by Li Xiangbei's ears, and it was like the sound of a devil that passed through his mind. It didn't fade away for a long time, causing his entire body to instantly suffuse with strands of coldness, and his heart even trembled without end. He suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked towards the crown prince. He saw that the young man had only glanced at him coldly before retracting his gaze. However, he just sat there. Even if he did not move or speak, his aura was still very strong, making it hard for people to ignore him. Li Xiangbei took a deep breath and hurriedly comforted himself in his heart. This should be just a casual threat from the young man. It's okay, calm down. But why couldn't he calm down? Li Xiangbei could not help but want to stand up, but was pulled back by the teacher beside him. On the other side, the beautiful teacher from the Joei Academy also hurriedly smiled and tried to smooth things over. Principal Yun, our Principal Li is just joking with you. Principal Yun snorted in disdain and turned his head away arrogantly. Who's joking with you? Who's joking with your ancestors? Our royal schools, Sir Jojo, will not lose. Bah, bah, bah. Why are they calling me Mr. Jojo Yun Piao Miao? Couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Li Xiangbei and turned her head to look at the arena. At this moment, the black-clothed man from the Jiaowei Academy was already standing in the arena in front of the young crown princess. He cupped his hands and said coldly, "Zhang Chunlong of Jiaowei Academy, please enlighten me." As he spoke, he pulled out a pitch-black whip from his waist. With a crackling sound, it swept through the air. The shadow of the whip was like a snake as it lashed towards Arbor's wrist. Qiao Mu calmed herself down and coldly observed him from the sidelines. She saw that the whip was already in front of her, but it was blocked with a pa sound. Around the little guy's body, jade talismans appeared out of thin air. The talisman power flowed, and the jade white light flickered. It was very eye-catching. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Whoa, it was really a layman watching a show. They had no idea what was going on inside. It turned out that when the little girl had set up the arena, she had already put on a defensive formation using invisibility talismans and quickly set it up around her. Chapter 4152. This Zhang Chunlong was also a swift and decisive person. He immediately attacked the little lady without even saying a single word. He wanted to use a trick to catch the little stoic off guard. However, he didn't expect that the little stoic had long been on guard. Her pair of icy, bead-like eyes were currently staring unblinkingly at the person in front of her, a chilly glint in her eyes. Crack! A green whip turned into a streak of dark light and whipped directly in Zhang Chunlong's direction. The speed was so fast that even Zhang Chunlong couldn't help but be surprised. With a spin of his body, he rapidly retreated a few steps to the outside and steadily landed on the ground with a bewildered expression. Wow! This time, everyone couldn't sit still, and they all started whispering to each other in loud voices. It's a talisman matrix. The little crown princess really is a great talisman practitioner. I've never seen a great talisman practitioner fight in public before. So awesome, so awesome. I've really broadened my horizons today. Arbor naturally turned a deaf ear to the excited shouts around him. Yet he heard two especially excited voices coming from behind him. Duo and Nyonyo fearlessly rushed onto the 6th arena where they were fighting. Holding a loudspeaker, they used an extremely excited and passionate voice to chirp. Friends, young masters, young misses, and spectators. Everyone has seen it, right? A talisman practitioner. This student representative from the Royal Academy is a talisman practitioner. She set up a concealment defensive talisman matrix long before she set up the arena. Wow, so awesome, isn't it? Everyone look. This old classmate from Jiaowei Academy already has a displeased expression on his face. Evidently, his sneak attack failed, and he ended up pecking at the rice instead. Too exciting, truly too exciting. I feel that without a doubt, the great talisman practitioner is bound to win this match. They blabbered on and on about the little stoic, trampling Jiaowei Academy's Zhang Chunlong into the depths of the dust without the slightest scruple. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the two fearless hosts. You guys are truly brave warriors. Aren't you worried that you'll be directly killed by Jiaowei Academy's people after exiting this arena after the match? You talk too much. Zhang Chunlong's face darkened. He swung his whip and sent the two hosts flying. The moment Duo and Nyonyo flew out hand in hand, she didn't forget to exclaim in a very competent manner, "Everyone, don't worry. We'll be back soon." Everyone was speechless as they looked up at the sky. They always felt that the holy best battle arena had invited these two amusing hosts from who knows where. They were simply here to be funny. A cold smile hung on Zhang Chunlong's face. "Little girl, you're quite good at using a whip, and you're also quite good at using talismans. However, those who are too proud will always be defeated by their pride. Look, your sand scorpions have no effect on me." Zhang Chunlong took a step forward, and Arbor saw the sand scorpions retreat a few steps. The little girl glanced at Zhang Chunlong with interest. A poison master with a special ability? She saw the black smoke rising from his feet and immediately knew that he had a special ability. Along the way, he used the poison power under his feet to force the sand scorpions to retreat step by step. Arbor's eyes couldn't help but brighten. She swung her hand and raised a storage talisman, once again storing the sand scorpions into the talisman. She then glanced at that poison master and raised her hand with a whoosh, sprinkling out poison. Chapter 4153. That's great. She finally had a test subject for the poison that she had previously developed. This poison master was simply the best candidate to test her current poison. As long as her poison was more powerful than the poison that had spread throughout his body, it would be able to seep into his skin, flesh, blood, and meridians, causing him great discomfort. If it didn't work on him, then it naturally meant that her poison was useless against him. A level 3 god tier master and a poison master. He was the most suitable person to test for poison. There was probably no one else in the world who was more suitable than him. Ming Yas sat below the arena, a few people away, in the same row as Prince Amo. At this moment, he could clearly see the flickering flames in the little girl's eyes, and his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Looking up at the man in black on the arena, he seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth were tightly pursed into a straight line. The poison powder that rose into the air was immediately sprinkled on Zhang Chunlong's body as if it didn't cost any money. It wasn't until Arbor sprinkled the third handful of powder that Zhang Chunlong couldn't help but tremble violently, staggering back a few steps. Zhang Chunlong was actually forced to spit out a mouthful of poison blood. The expression of Li Xiangbei of the Jiawei Academy abruptly changed. He pressed down on the armrest of the chair with one hand and raised his body slightly. His entire body was taut, and he looked like he was ready to attack at any moment. Principal Yin swept a glance at him and chuckled. I'm really sorry. I didn't expect this old classmate of yours to be so weak, even though he looks powerful. Who was he trying to fool? This Li Xiangbei had some eyesight. Who couldn't tell that Zhang Chunlong wasn't a student of the Jiawei Academy at all? Zhang Chunlong was Principal Li's personal guard, and it wasn't strange at all that his cultivation had reached the level of a level 3 god tier master. After all, Zhang Chunlong was someone who'd had many fortuitous encounters in his early years. After joining the Jiawei Academy, he was greatly appreciated by Principal Li, and the usual cultivation resources were naturally given to him. Li Xiangbei raised his eyelids slightly, and his line of sight turned to Imo Yin, who was sitting to the side. Seeing him glance over coldly with a bone-chilling expression, he could only suppress the anger in his belly as quickly as possible. He was extremely confident in Zhang Chunlong. Zhang Chunlong would not easily lose to this little girl in front of him. If Zhang Chunlong were to be struck off the stage by the stoic face now, then Jiawei Academy would truly lose all face. After all, green hair, Jiang Lu Shui, and Zhang Chunlong were enough to prove that the Jiawei Academy was nothing but trash in front of the Imperial School. On the stage, Qiao Mu carefully observed Zhang Chunlong's reaction and nodded imperceptibly. Zhang Chunlong's poison resistance was indeed not bad. The powder that she sprinkled was one of a kind in the world. It was extremely cold and poisonous. The fact that Zhang Chunlong was able to hold on until now and his body was only slightly swaying showed that he had some strength. Unfortunately, Arbor flicked out a palm-sized thing with complete petals and fangs. He quickly dug into his inner world with one hand and waved out another cloud of golden sand powder. This was the world's most corrosive poison sand powder, made from the combination of the blue spirit snake emperor, the man-eating flower, and the golden saint poisonous flower. It drifted out with the wind. As if it had a mind of its own, it converged into a golden silk satin that swirled and swayed around Zhang Chunlong, whose expression had changed greatly. After the little man-eating flower touched the ground, it immediately swelled in the wind, and its body expanded 100 times. Chapter 4154. It abruptly revealed its malevolent fangs. contrasting with the opening and closing of its enormous petals. At first glance, it made one's hair stand on end. Splat! It sprayed a mouthful of green venom at Zhang Chunlong without the slightest hesitation. Zhang Chunlong's expression abruptly changed, and he forced himself to move back several steps. When he raised his hand, he saw a pitch-black, large toad covered in lumps with pus oozing out of every lump. It jumped onto the stage with a plop. The little stoic immediately retreated several steps in succession, her small face taut. Although her adorable small face was expressionless, everyone could see the clear disdain in her small eyes. Disgusting, dirty, smelly, shameless. The little stoic immediately leaped into the air and stared vigilantly at the poisonous toad below. The man-eating flower, however, looked extremely elated. It swayed each of its large, scarlet petals and extended its fangs wantonly. This fellow promptly threw down the main character, Zhang Chunlong, and directly twisted its trembling body, pouncing in the toad's direction with a whoosh. Thus, everyone saw a bizarre scene. A giant man-eating flower chased after the toad relentlessly. From time to time, it would spit out a mouthful of green venom. It was constantly trying to melt the poisonous toad. Seeing that the man-eating flower wasn't doing anything serious, the little stoic knitted her brows and took out the blue spirit snake emperor with a flip of her hand. Go suck his blood. The little stoic patted the little blue snake's head with an instructive expression. Don't throw away the watermelon after picking up sesame seeds. That person's blood is the strongest poison. You can do it. Hiss. The little blue snake immediately scuttled excitedly, and its tiny body abruptly turned into an enormous figure several meters long and wide in the air. With a hiss, it opened its enormous mouth and directly bit at Zhang Chunlong's leg. The spectators numbly looked at the little stoic floating in the air. This little crown princess, not only did she summon so many poisonous scorpions earlier, she also summoned an Arabian man-eating flower and a large snake now. They could be considered to have understood her combat prowess. Whoever went up would be unlucky, right? Fortunately, they had Zhang Chunlong, this old classmate, who stepped onto the stage first and helped them experience the little stoic's brilliant moves. It would also prevent them from stepping on a minefield again. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Although he was unlucky to have the little stoic, this oddball, as his competitor. But compared to Zhang Chunlong's misfortune, everyone felt that they might not be the unluckiest. Zhang Chunlong forcefully raised his chi and flew up. His body spun half a circle in the air. However, he suddenly felt his feet sink. When he looked down, he couldn't help but cry out in his heart. He saw that the huge blue snake's tail had already wrapped around his legs. At this moment, it exerted force, and his whole body suddenly fell down. Just as Zhang Chunlong's circle divine power was about to smash down, the little stoic threw out an attack talisman from the side. The power of the talisman collided with his palm and directly caused the divine power he released to suddenly collapse. Zhang Chunlong clenched his fists as a deep fear flashed through his eyes. Just as he was about to turn his head to look at the stoic face, he suddenly felt a pain in his leg. His entire body immediately turned cold as he felt the snake's fangs burrowing into his skin. His blood flowed out uncontrollably like a continuous stream. This huge blue snake, it sucked blood. Zhang Chunlong's entire body involuntarily trembled as a chill spread from the tip of his heart. Arbor stood in the air and coldly gazed at Zhang Chunlong, who had fallen onto the stage and was tightly wrapped around by the snake's tail. Chapter 4155. A pained expression appeared on his face. He felt as if his legs were about to be minced by the snake's tail, and his entire body ached incessantly. Zhang Chunlong let out a pained howl. He glared at Arbor and coldly shouted, "Do you think the poisonous blood in my body is that easy to suck?" When Li Xiangbei from Jiawei Academy saw that his capable retainer was defeated by the little stoic, indignation naturally shot out from his eyes. Li Xiangbei abruptly clapped his hands and stood up from his seat. He shouted, "Chunlong, admit defeat. If he didn't admit defeat now, his blood would probably be sucked dry by that huge snake. This despicable Royal Academy actually allowed a student who could control many spirit beasts to participate in the competition. There were so many sand scorpions, man-eating flowers, and huge blue snakes. They clearly wanted to gang up on the other competitors, right? If Sir Jojo heard Headmaster Lee's thoughts right now, he would definitely snort disdainfully at him. If it were you, would you gang up on them? I already said that there aren't any rules in the competition. You're free to leave the stage and rely on your own abilities. If you lose, you can only blame yourselves for being weak and weak. Suddenly, the blue spirit snake emperor shook off Zhang Chunlong and hissed as it rolled around and continuously shrunk its body. Zhang Chunlong revealed a scornful sneer. I already said that my blood isn't that easy to suck. Right now, his complexion was slightly pale, probably due to excessive blood loss. When he saw the little stoic's cold and severe eyes sweep over, his heart abruptly shuddered, and he inexplicably felt a chill. He opened his mouth and shouted, "This humble one admits defeat." However, just as he opened his mouth to admit defeat, the man-eating flower tore off half of that huge toad's leg. Immediately, the poison inside that toad's body flowed out with a splash, and its aura instantly withered. "Stop!" Zhang Chunlong's pupils contracted, and he shouted sternly, "This humble one has already admitted defeat. You can't." Arbor floated to the ground and beckoned with his hand. The man-eating flower shrank with each step and returned to the size of a palm when it hopped in front of Arbor. Now that it had swallowed the toad's poison, its crimson petals were as magnificent as blood. Several serrated fangs drilled out of the petals and shook their heads at Arbor to flatter him. Arbor took it back and lowered his head to pick up the little blue snake from the ground. The little blue snake's belly was bulging as if it had sucked Zhang Chunlong's blood. It lay on Arbor's palm like a corpse, rolling back and forth. Its eyes looked at its little master pitifully, as if it had eaten too much and was begging for attention. Arbor glanced at it with a stoic expression. It raised its hand and pressed down on its bulging belly. The little blue snake immediately showed a pitiful expression of "I'm so pitiful. I want to die. No, master, I'm about to die." And its body kept rolling around in her hands. Rolling around, rolling around. Arbor expressionlessly took out a pill and stuffed it into its mouth. He raised his hand and took back the gluttonous creature. The poison in Zhang Chunlong's body was indeed formidable. Even with the blue spirit snake emperor's poison physique, she was still suffering from abdominal pain after drinking so much of his poisonous blood. It had to be said that this damned Zhang Chunlong really did have some skills. On the other hand, Zhang Chunlong's heart was filled with fear. He glanced at the poisonous toad and saw that half of its leg had been torn off by the man-eating flower. It was now limping in front of him. Both the master and the human were severely injured. The poisonous toad had just jumped in front of him when it lay on the ground on its last breath. Chapter 4156. The fate of this master and beast duo was full of misfortune. They both injured a leg and had a lot of their poisonous blood sucked out. At this time, the symptoms of Zhang Chunlong's excessive blood loss manifested. At the same time that his mind was in a daze, he felt his vision darken. Principal Lee's face darkened, and he hastily had two Joe Academy students support Zhang Chunlong down. The poisonous toad, which had lost half of its leg and had fainted due to blood loss, was also carried off the stage. Li Xiangbei faced Yun Piaomiao's direction and harumphed heavily with a flick of his sleeve. He then sat back down with a very unsightly expression. They had truly thrown away all of Joe Academy's reputation. A gloomy expression hung on Li Xiangbei's face, and his breathing was exceptionally gloomy. Even as he sat there, he continuously emitted a low pressure. Meanwhile, on Arbor's side, after seeing everyone swiftly get Zhang Chunlong and the poisonous toad off the stage, he casually found a relatively clean place and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes to regulate his breathing. Duo Nyonyo's incomparably excited cries entered his ears. distinguished young masters and misses, friends, and spectators. After an intense defending match, our arena master, Imperial Academy's student arbor, will obtain 100 points for his first challenge. Next, if anyone wants to challenge the arena master, they can directly go up the stage or raise their hand to express their desire to challenge us. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd below fell silent, as if Duo Ñoño's impassioned speech was merely playing the lute to a cow. The crowd of cultivators below the stage lowered their heads, as if treating Ñoño Duo as non-existent. The two hosts looked at each other in dismay. In the end, it was still Duo who spoke. Friends, if no one else goes up the stage to challenge us, then we will continue with the lot-drawing ranking competition. From now on, if no one comes up to challenge us, our arena master will automatically obtain 100 points every 2 hours until the end of the competition. She will also obtain an additional reward from the arena master, a grand prize of 10,000 points. Everyone, in other words, regardless of whether or not no one came up to challenge us, the little stoic could automatically obtain 100 points as a reward just by sitting there for 2 hours. This made the other friends who were fighting in full swing in the ring suddenly feel their balls ache. They were fighting to the death here, but in the end, other people just had to sit cross-legged on the 6th arena and close their eyes to rest and recuperate, and they could actually automatically obtain points. If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Qi Xianxian couldn't help but slap her thigh and laugh out loud. Their little stoic was seriously too amusing. It felt like just by sitting there, doing nothing, with a straight face, it gave people a feeling of happiness. Ha 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 ha! While Qi Xianxian was laughing, she suddenly saw her name appear on top of the 4th arena. She could only stop smiling, stand up, and leap into the ring to begin her own match. After Qi Xianxian finished fighting and returned triumphantly, little Fatty took out a small fan from his inner world and waved it beside his wife. Xianxian, do you think they still dare to go up and challenge Qiao Qiao? By now, a new batch of people had already gone up to the 1st to 5th arenas. Only Sir Jojo on the 6th arena sat there motionlessly, as if he was asleep and didn't even bother to move his eyelids. At this time, a clear voice was heard from the 3rd arena. I'm setting up the arena. Chapter 41:57. Everyone instantly looked in astonishment at the man who set up the ring on stage number 3. Who is it? The little fatty asked curiously. Beside him, Liu turned around and said, This person seems to be a student from Sangzhou's Huayu Academy. Then they heard the host, Ñoño, exclaim excitedly, That's great, students. Another person dares, fearfully, to die. Come up to set up a ring. I announce that this Huayu Academy's student Qi Nan has successfully set up a ring. Suddenly, there was an uproar from below. Qi Nan stood with her hands behind her back and took out several dozen blue talisman papers from her inner world. She threw them out in passing and rapidly formed a defensive formation. Before Duo and Ñoño could finish their series of excited shouts, they heard the sound of a gust of wind, and a blue-clothed woman stood on the stage with a smile. I would like to seek guidance from young Master Qi. This woman smiled without batting an eyelid. Without another word, she summoned a spirit sword from her conscience. With a flick of her finger, the spirit sword flew in Qi Nan's direction. The little stoic finally lifted her eyelids in boredom. Her pair of cold and desolate eyes stared unblinkingly at the two people fighting in full swing on stage number 3. This Qi Nan should be a member of Sangzhou's talisman patrician family. Her use of talismans was rather standard, but some of the talismans she drew she truly couldn't bear to look straight at them. Shoddy skills and an unbearably vulgar knockoff instantly assaulted her senses. Indeed, she couldn't help but frown slightly. On the 3rd arena, Qi Nan, who had been challenged several times in succession, was gasping for breath and had difficulty breathing. Truly, different people had different fates. He was also a ring guardian. On his side, people were constantly coming up to challenge him. While the little stoic crown princess's stage number 6 was completely deserted, it was even more desolate than being completely deserted. No one paid any attention to the Stoic student on stage number 6 at all, allowing her to regulate her breathing, meditate, and count mushrooms. After 4 hours, no one actually went up to challenge her, allowing this Stoic student to pick up 200 points for nothing. On the other hand, Nan was somewhat powerless at stage number 3. After all, after being challenged no less than 5 times in a row, no one would be able to withstand it. Nan hurriedly raised her hand and requested to use the ringmaster's privilege to rest for 15 minutes. He needed to make full use of these precious 15 minutes. After setting up 2 defensive arrays around her, Nan hastily entered a state of cultivation, anxious to recover. The ringmaster's expedient waiver can only be used 3 times a day, and each use lasts for 15 minutes. Nan was very clear that he was in a very dangerous situation. The problem now was that the 3rd and 6th rings were also set up, but he was beaten like a dog. While the other one was so bored that he kept counting mushrooms, Nan took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the fluctuating emotions in her heart. She ordered herself to enter a state of cultivation as soon as possible. Look quickly. What is the young crown prince consort doing? The little crown princess took out a small cauldron from her conscience. The small cauldron expanded with the wind and instantly became as tall as a person. The little Stoic turned her head to glance at them and directly flipped the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron over. She dove into the cauldron, and there was a loud rumble. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't help but twitch his mouth. TSK, the little Stoic went to sleep. Everyone looked at each other in dismay and simultaneously revealed a speechless expression. Chapter 4158. It couldn't be helped. She had already waited for more than 4 hours, yet no one was willing to challenge her. Could it be that she had to keep her eyes open and count mushrooms until dawn? It was seriously too boring. Since no one challenged her, then she would go catch up on sleep. It was simply a waste of her excited anticipation to pass her days in such a boring manner. The little fatty couldn't resist sneaking a glance at Prince Mo beside him, only to see the latter's lips curled into a smile as his gaze circled that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron. His Highness probably felt that the little Stoic's actions were extremely amusing. The little fatty inwardly ridiculed and rolled his eyes. Little did he know that the little Stoic's actions were simply drawing hatred everywhere. At this moment, which academy disciple currently competing on the stage didn't gnash their teeth in hatred at the Stoic face? She truly was a shameless little Stoic. While others were fighting for their lives, she hid inside that cauldron and continued to slack off. The problem was that she could earn points automatically just by meditating on the spot. The points she earned in a day weren't the slightest bit inferior to others who diligently fought 10 matches in a row. How could they endure this? The little fatty and the others were actually well aware that the little girl wouldn't really seal herself inside that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron. She must have returned to Paradise Planet. Not only was the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron's defense extremely strong, it could also effectively isolate everyone's divine senses from infiltrating it. No matter how strong you were, all you would see after infiltrating the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron with divine senses was pitch black. It didn't matter to the little Stoic that she returned to Paradise Planet to sleep and eat with peace of mind. Casually tossing a demonic eye outside the arena would allow her to clearly grasp all the movements in the arena outside. Sir Jojo was actually already tired after tossing and turning for a day and night. After washing up and returning to her treehouse, Miss Chow hugged her pillow and quickly fell asleep comfortably. After she slept enough and got up, she ate some food and drank some spirit tea, feeling 100 times more energetic. Only then did the little girl appear inside the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron with great satisfaction. Just as she was about to open the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, she heard the muffled sound of a heavy punch above her head. Student Xiao Ming from Umbra Academy challenges Arena number 6. Student Arbor from the Royal School. Nyonya Duo shouted excitedly. Even through the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, Arbor could hear the loud applause outside. Many students from other academies were moved to tears when they saw that someone finally dared to challenge Arbor. That's great. Finally, someone fearlessly stepped onto the arena to challenge the young crown princess. Arbor lifted the red copper cauldron and waved his hand, summoning the cauldron back into his consciousness. Yin looked at the little fellow's spirited face and swept away his previous weariness. She couldn't help but curl her lips into a smile. Only they knew that it had only been less than 2 hours since Jojo had released the cauldron. However, Lady Xiao Xiao should have already finished eating, washing up, and catching up on sleep. This troublesome child was now full of energy. How could he be the same as these cultivators who have been fighting nonstop for a day and a night? The little stoic washed her white academy uniform, dried it, and put it back on. She naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to change her clothes midway. Wouldn't this seem even more strange? Student Xiaoming from Umbra Academy, start the challenge. After Nyonyo screeched excitedly, the tall man, named Xiaoming, fiercely stomped the ground and charged toward her. Chapter 4159. When the little stoic saw this person summon a long saber and slash at her without a second word, her mood immediately brightened up. What a good man. It was a fight, so it should be straightforward like this and not waste words. This Xiaoming from Umbra Academy had a squarish face, and his attacks were swift and accurate. The spirit weapon in his hand was a broad saber that was 7 feet long. He brandished it in his hand, stirring up fierce gales that pounced at her. Arbor abruptly flashed and was already in front of Xiaoming. The startled swan dagger abruptly leaped out of her conscious and stabbed at the broad saber with a whoosh as swift as a clap of thunder. Clang, 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 clang. The broad saber and the short, agile dagger clashed several times, stirring up the nearby air to fluctuate incessantly. Whoosh! A beam of flame shot over, but it was deflected by Arbor's snow-colored silver needles with a flip of her hand. Those silver needles were forged from ice and snow, so they were naturally the little girl's water spirit power. She had fused with sacred wood, sacred water, and sacred earth for a long time, and now she could use them with a flip of her hand and do as she pleased. She didn't need to waste any effort to figure out what she wanted them to transform into, and simply raise her hand. Several soft chi-chi-chi sounds were heard as the snow-refined silver needles abruptly shot toward Xiaoming's face after being lightly deflected by Arbor's slender hand. Xiaoming's expression didn't change, and he waved his hand to set up a partial defensive fire helmet in front of him. It blocked the attack of several silver needles. However, in the blink of an eye, several hundred snow-refined silver needles once again flew out simultaneously. This time, they split into 3 paths and rushed toward Xiaoming. Xiaoming promptly activated his defensive spirit weapon and erected a defensive wall in front of him. He heard a series of soft thuds. Countless snow-refined silver needles directly penetrated the defensive wall and shot toward his limbs and bones. Xiaoming didn't panic and immediately leaped down. His figure flipped back and forth in midair as he continuously struck out clusters of flames. Following a series of clanging sounds, countless snow-refined silver needles were rapidly sent flying by him. In the end, it had to be said that the shock in his heart spread even more. Was the little stoic casually unleashing an attack without expending any divine power at all? Although the two of them had not been fighting for a long time, the intensity of the battle was extremely high. Basically, they didn't stop, moving back and forth, competing with their own divine power. His fire spirit was completely unable to suppress his opponent's water spirit. Even before this, everyone knew that the little stoic was actually someone who possessed 2 types of spirit energy sources. The water spirit and the wood spirit seemed to be very powerful, so powerful that no one could tell what level they were. Xiaoming took a deep breath, thinking that it must be above the 8th level. Then, could it be the 9th level spirit water? Cheek. After a light sound, Xiaoming suddenly felt a pain in his shoulder. Lowering his head to take a look, he saw a snow-refined silver needle made of water spirit piercing through his shoulder. The subtle but itchy feeling of being pricked by needles instantly numbed half of his arm. Hiss! Qiuming sucked in a breath of cold air. He thought to himself, this girl's methods are truly terrifying. She can actually integrate some unknown poison into her own water spirit? If it was purely a water spirit's attack, it would at most hurt. Why would it produce such a strange, itchy feeling? Soon, Qiuming's arm drooped down. However, his speed wasn't the slightest bit slow. He leaped into the air with a few leaps and punched down. Arbor's expression didn't change in the slightest. He waved his hand, and a wisp of fine yellow sand covered the sky and rolled up. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.